Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into something ancient, something that never really went away. Picture it, a lonely hill in Ireland, October wind clawing through the grass, and fires blooming like orange stars against a velvet night. You can smell smoke and damp soil. You can hear chanting, low and rhythmic, curling into the dark. It's not Halloween yet. At least, not the one you know, but what you're looking at is its ancestor, the Festival of Samhain. And you probably won't survive this night. Not if the spirits have anything to say about it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and the time where you are. I love seeing who else is awake with me in the quiet hours. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The year is roughly 500 BC. The Celts, tribes spread across what's now Ireland, Scotland, and parts of France, divide the year not by months or weeks, but by halves. There's the light half, full of life and growth, and the dark half, when the world shrinks inward. Crops are gathered, and warmth becomes a luxury. Samhain, pronounced Samhain, marks the line between those halves. You could call it New Year's Eve for the ancient world. Only this one comes with ghosts included. You find yourself standing at the edge of a clearing where a bonfire roars so high it seems to lick the stars. Around it, villagers move in flickering halos, faces glowing, shadows dancing. The air smells of burning herbs and animal fat, earthy and sharp. The whole village has gathered to offer thanks for the harvest and protection for what comes next. Because once winter begins, survival isn't guaranteed. Famine, illness, and frost can steal entire families before spring. So the people make peace with unseen forces, hoping those forces will show mercy. One mainstream fact: Samhain was indeed one of the four major Celtic fire festivals, alongside Imbolc, Beltane, and Lughnasadh. Each one marked a seasonal turning, but Samhain was the most feared and revered. It wasn't just a date on a calendar. It was a threshold, a crack in time when boundaries loosened. The Celts believed that during Samhain, the veil between worlds, our world and the other world, grew thin enough for spirits to wander freely. And that's where things get interesting. Imagine you're walking home from the fire, your torch guttering in the wind. Somewhere behind you, a shape flickers, a figure where no figure should be. You turn, heart pounding, and there's nothing but the empty path. Still, the hairs on your arms rise. People back then wouldn't dismiss that feeling. They'd say the dead were near. Not necessarily evil, just curious. They might visit their old homes, peeking on family, or linger by the hearth. But the line between friendly ghost and hungry one was blurry, so it was best not to risk offense. That's why villagers left offerings, bowls of food, bits of bread, mugs of milk, all placed on doorsteps or windowsills. Some historians call these the first treats. The idea was simple: feed the dead, and they'll pass by without mischief. Forget to do it, and maybe your cows stop giving milk, or worse, your house catches fire. Here's a fringe tidbit for you. Some Celtic sites show traces of ritual animal bones in fire pits, and a few scholars believe human bones were occasionally mixed in. The word bonfire might literally come from bonefire. It's debated, but there's something both eerie and logical about it. You burn what once lived to keep what still lives safe. Recycling, Iron Age edition. Historians still argue whether Samhain was primarily a festival for the dead or a communal survival ritual dressed up in ghost stories. Was it about honoring ancestors, or about controlling fear through ceremony? Maybe both. For the Celts, there wasn't much difference between the spiritual and the practical. The gods are part of daily life, like rain or hunger. As the night deepens, you notice the villagers driving their cattle between two smaller fires. The smoke curls thick around them, stinging your throat. It's not random. This is purification, protection against disease through sacred smoke. You step through too, eyes watering, half convinced it might scrub away your bad luck. There's laughter and coughing and the smell of singed hair, and for a moment everyone seems alive in the purest sense. Because death is watching, and you all know it. A woman tosses herbs into the flames, mugwort for visions, rowan for safety, maybe a dash of something less innocent. Sparks burst like tiny suns. You realize this isn't just a party. It's a survival spell. Every gesture, every chant is meant to balance the world before winter tips it over. Then comes the moment the crowd quiets. A druid steps forward, white-robed, face hidden by the hood's shadow. He raises a branch and speaks in a language that hums in your bones. You don't understand the words, but you feel the intent. The druid blesses the gathered souls, calls on the gods, perhaps even the dead themselves. People kneel, heads bowed. The wind catches his cloak, and for an instant he looks less like a man and more like a moving shadow. Somewhere beyond the circle, an owl calls. Someone swears they see shapes in the smoke, figures with hollow eyes, drifting just beyond the firelight. Children hide behind their parents. The druid finishes the rite, voice low and calm, as if nothing unusual has happened. But you feel it. The air's changed texture, heavier, charged. Whether it's spirits or imagination doesn't matter. Fear and awe have always been two sides of the same coin. You sit on a cold stone, watching the flames devour what's left of the harvest offerings. There's a strange comfort in it. Humans have always needed rituals to explain what we can't control. The cold, the dark, the finality of death. Maybe that's the real start of Halloween. An ancient coping mechanism dressed in moonlight and ash. A man nearby nudges you and jokes that if you hear footsteps after midnight, it's probably just your dead uncle checking if you save him some bread. You laugh, but only a little, because part of you hopes he's wrong. The fire crackles, sparks fade into the fog, and the night stretches long ahead. You draw your cloak tighter, already sensing that this story, your story, won't end with dawn. The fire dies down to embers, and you can feel the temperature drop like a hell breath. Around you, people begin retreating into their small round huts, wattle walls creaking, thatched roofs whispering as the wind presses against them. You follow, your boots crunching on frostbitten grass, the air laced with peat smoke and something faintly sweet, like apples left too long in storage. Inside, a single candle glows. It flickers in rhythm with your heartbeat. The villagers don't go to bed yet. They're waiting. Every door is closed, every window sealed with ash marks shaped like spirals. Because tonight isn't safe to sleep too early. You sit near the hearth, listening as a mother sets a small plate near the threshold, bread, honey, and a few drops of milk. For the visitors, she whispers. You glance at her, half smiling, and she doesn't return it. She means it. The dead are out there, and they're hungry. This part of Samhain, when spirits are believed to walk among the living, is where the tradition of leaving offerings truly takes form. You might call it primitive trick-or-treating, though nobody's wearing costumes or knocking yet. Instead, people prepare a silent negotiation with whatever's roaming outside. Take this gift, the offering says, and pass our home by. It sounds eerie, but there's a beautiful logic behind it. The Celts didn't think of the dead as evil. They thought of them as unpredictable guests. You wouldn't ignore a traveler at your door on a stormy night, right? The same courtesy applies when the traveler has no body. One mainstream historical fact here. Archaeologists and folklorists have found repeated accounts of Samhain feasts for the dead, entire meals laid out for invisible diners. It wasn't superstition in their eyes. It was duty. Ancestors, heroes, spirits, all part of the same cosmic family reunion. You watch through the smoke as an old man carefully sprinkles flour across his doorstep. It seems strange until you realize he's checking for footprints in the morning, a sign that the spirits accepted his hospitality. If there are marks, he'll take it as a blessing. If there aren't, well, maybe next year. Outside, the wind begins to carry faint sounds, whispers, laughter, maybe just the trees arguing. Still, it feels personal. Someone knocks. Once. Then silence. Your pulse spikes. Nobody moves. Finally, the father opens the door, slowly. Nothing but darkness and mist. And yet, the bowl on the ground is empty. You swear it wasn't a moment ago. You want to joke, but the room feels heavy. The villagers simply nod to one another, as if to say, "Good." They've eaten. There's a fringe tidbit here that most people don't know. Some folklore from rural Ireland and Scotland mentions fairies. Not the glittery kind, but the ancient, dangerous beings said to walk alongside the dead during Samhain. They weren't angels or demons, but something older, maybe jealous of humanity's fire. People left offerings for them too, tiny bits of food on window ledges, to keep them appeased. It said the fairies would bless your livestock if pleased, or steal your child if offended. Historians still argue whether these fairy legends predated Celtic belief or were merged later as mythologies collided. Some say they're distorted memories of ancient pagan gods, pushed into folklore as Christianity spread. Others believe they represent a very real fear of the wilderness, those vast, unknowable forests that bordered every village. You can see why people would rather imagine invisible neighbors than accept that the dark itself is empty. Later in the night, the family finally eats. The meal is hearty, barley stew, wild herbs, maybe a sliver of venison. Before anyone takes a bite, a small portion is dropped into the fire. The flames hiss, devouring it. A sacrifice, yes, but also a thank you. The ancestors eat through smoke. You watch the sparks rise, imagining them finding their way to some parallel world, some cozy afterlife kitchen where your great-great-grandmother sits nodding in approval. The talk grows louder as cider flows. Someone tells a story about a man who ignored Samhain custom. He refused to set food out, saying, "If the dead want dinner, let them cook it themselves." By morning, his fields were blackened, and his cows had vanished. Another neighbor swears he saw the man's ghost months later, begging for bread on a road that led nowhere. Everyone laughs nervously, pretending they're not a little convinced. Humans have always needed stories to shape fear into something manageable. You know that feeling, when you hear a bump in the night and tell yourself it's probably the wind. Same principle, just with higher stakes. Back then, admitting the world was random felt more terrifying than believing it was haunted. You step outside for a moment. The sky is deep black, stars sharp as needles. The bonfire on the hill is a fading ember now, but in every doorway, you see faint glows, offerings lit by candles. From a distance, the village looks like a constellation on Earth. Each light is a promise. Each plate of bread, a silent conversation between past and present. You can almost sense the dead listening, wandering among you. They're not frightening anymore. They're familiar. Some historians suggest that Samhain's respect for the departed helped Celtic communities handle grief more naturally than later Christian societies, which often hid death behind ceremony. Here, The dead weren't gone. They just lived next door for a night. As you stand there, a small boy runs past wearing a mask made of bark and soot. He giggles, hiding behind a wall. His mother scolds him softly. "It's too soon for disguises," she says, "but you note it. The idea of hiding from spirits by mimicking them will grow later into something far more recognizable. For now, though, it's just play." The candle beside your own offering flutters. The flame leans one way, then steadies. The villagers say that means someone unseen has entered, taken what they needed, and gone. You decide not to test that theory. You close the door gently, whispering a good night that no one hears. And somewhere between superstition and survival, you understand the quiet genius of these people. They turned fear into hospitality, death into dialogue. That's not weakness, it's art. You crawl onto your straw bed, listening to the wind scrape the roof like fingernails. You imagine the spirits wandering peacefully now, bellies full, maybe pausing to admire the living before drifting home through the veil. You don't know it yet, but this custom, leaving food for wandering souls, will echo through centuries, morphing into candy bowls, doorstep pumpkins, and doorbell chimes. But for tonight, it's still raw, primal, and strangely comforting. You let your eyes close to the sound of the fire sighing low, the last warmth before winter tightens its grip. By morning, the mist clings to the hills like wet cloth. The fires from the night before are out, leaving behind blackened circles and a faint metallic smell that seeps into your cloak. You rise early with the others, following the faint trail of smoke curling up from the sacred mound where the druids stand. The day after Samhain always feels strange, like the world hasn't quite decided which side it's on. Your feet crunch on frost as you climb. Crows watch from the branches above, heads cocked, as if judging. Below, the valley is pale and still, save for thin ribbons of smoke spiraling from chimneys. The entire landscape smells of burned offerings, bone and ash, earth and fat. Someone beside you jokes that if the gods aren't satisfied after last night, they're just being picky. You laugh, but softly. At the top of the hill, what's left of the main bonfire smolders. Villagers approach one by one, carrying pots, embers, and ashes to take home. They'll relight their hearths using the sacred spark, a symbol that the flame of life continues through winter. It's practical, sure. Fire was precious, but it's also deeply spiritual. The communal flame ties everyone together. That's where the word bonfire likely begins. A mainstream fact. Many scholars trace it to bone fire, from the ritual burning of animal bones during Samhain. After the harvest slaughter, bones were thrown into the flames to purify and protect the tribe. Later, that practice blended with Christian traditions of All Saints vigils and communal fires, but the etymology remains. In essence, every Halloween bonfire you've ever seen is a faint echo of those ancient bone-fueled pyres. You reach into the ashes and feel warmth still lingering. It's comforting and unsettling. Something about the remains feels personal, like the fire devoured more than just wood and livestock scraps. A strange thought crosses your mind. Maybe those bones weren't always animal. Some fringe historians have dared to suggest human sacrifices once fed these flames. There's little concrete proof, but Roman chroniclers hinted at it, and archaeology has found enough odd evidence. Charred human remains near ceremonial pits, to make the theory hard to dismiss entirely. Of course, historians still argue whether those remains were ritual victims, cremation burials, or just a coincidence of time and decay. But the rumor stuck. To later Christian missionaries, it was proof of pagan wickedness. To modern scholars, it's a reminder of how thin the line was between religion and necessity in a world where life depended on weather and chance. The druid at the mound raises his hand for silence. His cloak ripples like smoke in the wind. You notice that he carries a carved staff topped with a spiral of bone. He chants in the old tongue, voice low but firm, calling on gods whose names are nearly lost to time. Cernunnos, Tyrannes, Brigid. He thanks them for the harvest, for the flame, for another chance at survival. Then, in one swift motion, he casts the last handful of ash into the wind. It scatters like gray snow, carried across the fields to bless them. People cheer softly, not wanting to break the stillness. It's both beautiful and eerie, the way everyone stands together, faces streaked with soot, watching ash drift toward the horizon. You linger as the crowd disperses, still thinking about those fires. There's something deeply human about them. How every culture, from Celts to Aztecs, turned flame into prayer. Fire consumes, purifies, transforms. It's destruction disguised as hope. You wonder if maybe that's what Halloween has always been about. Facing the darkness by lighting something on fire and pretending you're in control. You wander down the hill to the river, where villagers are washing soot off their hands. One girl hums softly, a tune you don't recognize, but that somehow feels familiar, like a lullaby with its melody carved out of the earth itself. She tells you it's sung every year after Samhain, to guide the souls of the departed back across the vale. It's said that if the singing stops too soon, the dead might lose their way and linger. You half expect her to grin, to reveal it's a joke, but she doesn't. She looks serious, eyes glinting like whetstone, and you realize again how fluid the line between myth and life is here. As you dry your hands, someone mentions that a family from a neighboring village didn't show up to the bonfire last night. Bad sign. Another man mutters. Maybe sickness, maybe something else. The crowd falls quiet. Superstition sits heavy in the air. Missing Samhain rituals is like skipping your smoke alarm check before a storm. It's tempting fate. A few kids begin playing nearby, poking sticks into the ashes. They pretend to summon spirits, laughing. One boy raises a piece of blackened bone and says it's from a fairy horse. You chuckle, but a few adults quickly snatch it away, warning him never to disturb remains from the sacred fire. They remember. One old woman whispers. Her words stick with you. They remember. Back at the village, people use the new embers to relight their hearths. Each home fills with orange warmth again, like tiny suns returning to the world. Families gather close, holding their palms toward the heat, murmuring thanks. The flames crackle, echoing the rhythm of their ancestors' prayers. Later, as the night returns, you sit by the rekindled fire with a mug of something sweet and hot. The conversation drifts between laughter and fear. Someone asks the druid whether the spirits truly cross over during Samhain. He smiles, eyes reflecting the flames. They never leave, he says quietly. We just stop noticing them when the sun comes back. A shiver ripples through the room. Not of fear, exactly. More like recognition. You think about how that idea has never really gone away. Even now, thousands of years later, you light candles, tell ghost stories, and carve glowing faces into pumpkins, as if to keep the dead entertained. Maybe you're not that different from the Celts huddled here tonight. Still pretending the fire is enough to keep the dark out. Outside, the moon breaks through the clouds, pale and sharp. It catches the smoke curling from chimneys, making it look like ghosts rising skyward. You can almost believe the veil is still thin, that for one night, the world remains both living and dead at once. You lean closer to the hearth, letting its warmth sink into your skin. The smell of charred bone lingers faintly, but somehow, it's not unpleasant anymore. It smells like history, like survival. And as you drift towards sleep, the last thought in your mind is a quiet truth. You've just witnessed humanity's oldest act of defiance. The night isn't something to fear. It's something to feed, to honor, to keep burning until morning. The next night, the mist thickens again, rolling low and silver through the trees. You follow a group of villagers toward a nearby meadow, where smoke rises from small fires spaced in a strange circle. The air smells of burnt herbs, wet leaves, and something musky, animal hides drying in the heat. Someone hands you a bundle of cloth. You unfold it to find a crude mask made from sheepskin, stitched together with twine. The eye holes are uneven. The smell is awful. Wear it, they tell you. You'll need it tonight. This is where the tradition of dressing up begins. Not as playful costuming, but as camouflage. You slip the mask over your face, and the world instantly changes. The edges of your vision blur. The air feels thicker. Your breath comes through ragged holes, warm and shallow. You're no longer yourself. Not really. You're something in between. The villagers move among the fires, their faces hidden behind masks made of bark, fur, and bone. Some carry torches, others rattle bones or shake bells. It's chaotic, eerie, and yet deeply purposeful. They're performing what scholars now call mumming, the act of disguising oneself to fool spirits wandering the earth during Samhain. The logic is simple. If the dead are walking, don't look alive. Blend in. Confuse them. It's humanity's oldest version of if you can't beat them, join them. And it works both ways. People believe that while disguised, they could also move freely through the other world, slipping unseen between realms to seek guidance or luck. One mainstream historical fact here: written accounts of guising, as it came to be called, date back to the Middle Ages, but its roots stretch far deeper into Celtic ritual. Archaeological finds show ancient masks carved from animal skulls and antlers in Ireland and Scotland, often found near Samhain-related sites. These weren't fashion choices. They were spiritual armor. You join the masked crowd as they begin their slow procession through the fields. The fires flicker, painting every hide and feather in orange light. A few villagers chant softly. Others simply hum or drum against hollow logs. The sound isn't quite music, not quite silence either. It's the sound of people trying to remind the dark who's in charge. Beside you, a woman wears a mask shaped like a crow's beak. So the dead don't know who's who, she says through the holes, voice muffled. But maybe the gods do. She winks, or at least you think she does, and vanishes into the fog. There's a fringe tidbit some folklorists whisper about, that the disguises weren't only to fool spirits, but also to allow humans to behave like them. Wildly, lawlessly, for one night. Ordinary social rules collapsed. You could beg, mock, or steal small things without punishment, because technically you weren't the one doing it. The mask was. In that sense, Halloween's mischief isn't a modern invention. It's a direct descendant of ancient moral loopholes. Historians still argue whether this night of masked chaos was sanctioned by druids or simply tolerated by them. Some say the priests encouraged it, a pressure release valve for rural tension. Others insist it was purely spontaneous, a yearly carnival before winter's long confinement. Either way, you can feel the energy shifting. The masked villagers laugh louder, move faster, dance wilder. Someone tosses herbs into the fire, and sparks burst into green light. The air tastes metallic, almost electric. You catch sight of your reflection in a puddle, half human, half creature, and it unsettles you, but also thrills you. The fear has changed flavor. It's no longer the quiet dread of ghosts at your door. It's the exhilarating kind, The same strange pleasure people feel now when they watch horror movies or walk through haunted houses. It's safe terror, ritualized adrenaline. Humans have always loved that edge. A child darts past dressed as a horned beast, waving a stick. You play along, pretending to cower, and he howls triumphantly. His mother laughs. "He'll sleep well after that," she says. You realize she's right. Fear exhausts, and exhaustion soothes. Even back then, they used fright as medicine for restless hearts. The fires burn lower as the procession circles back toward the village. People begin removing their masks, faces flushed, eyes glassy from heat and cider. A few hang their disguises on trees, letting the wind take them. It's symbolic, leaving behind whatever darkness they wore that night. Tomorrow, the world will return to normal order. But before dawn, there's one final act. You notice several villagers slipping away toward a nearby burial mound. You follow, keeping quiet. At the entrance, they light small lamps made of hollowed-out turnips. Yes, turnips, not pumpkins yet. Each carved with a crude face. The idea, they whisper, is to scare away wandering spirits or perhaps guide them home. The glow from the tiny lamps looks fragile, almost embarrassed beside the dying bonfires, but somehow more personal. You imagine each flicker as a whisper to a loved one. "We still remember you." As the group places the lamps along the mound, someone hums that same haunting melody from the day before. It floats over the moors, wrapping around the stones. You swear for a moment you see something moving in the dark, a figure watching, just beyond the firelight. But when you blink, it's gone. You stand there longer than the rest, staring at the faces cut into the turnips. They look both tragic and comical, frozen between grief and laughter. Maybe that's what Halloween has always been about. Making fun of fear so it doesn't consume you. Later, as you remove your mask and feel cold air hit your skin, you realize the night feels lighter somehow. You're not sure if the spirits have left, or if you've simply stopped fearing them. Maybe that's the secret. Masks don't just hide, they heal. By the time you return to the village, the fires are ashes again. People sleep soundly, their doors still marked with protective symbols. The turnip lamps flicker on the hill like tiny stars. You pause to look back one last time. The world is quiet, but it's not empty. It's simply resting, caught between one year and the next, between the living and the dead. And you, with soot on your hands and smoke in your lungs, have become part of it. The morning after the masked revelry feels deceptively calm. The sky is pale, thin lights seeping over the hills as the last traces of fog pull back toward the river. But inside every hut, the air hums with quiet tension, because today, the Druids walk. You hear them before you see them. The faint clink of charms, the whisper of robes brushing grass, the rhythmic tap of staffs against the ground. They move in small groups, solemn and slow, faces hidden under cowls bleached by years of smoke. Every villager knows the sound. It's the sound of judgment and blessing rolled into one. You step outside, breath clouding in the cold air. The first druid stops at a house across the field, lifts a hand, and mutters a blessing over the door. The family bows deeply. Then, as tradition demands, they offer him food, fresh bread, a jug of ale, perhaps a piece of meat from the slaughter. It's part offering, part tax. You've heard whispers that if a household refuses or gives too little, misfortune follows. Failed crops, sick animals, inexplicable accidents. And though nobody says it out loud, everyone knows the other half of this ritual. If the druids find a family unworthy, the blessing might turn to a curse. You've never seen it happen, but rumor says they once left a blackened mark on a door, a sign that no one in the village would trade with that house until spring. Mainstream fact: Celtic Druids really did travel during Samhain to bless households and fields. Historical accounts from early Roman observers describe how they would light torches from the central sacred fire and carry them to each home, symbolizing protection for the coming dark months. They were priests, judges, and scientists all at once, keepers of ritual knowledge that balanced fear and faith. You fall in behind them at a respectful distance, watching how people react. Some bow deeply, others avert their eyes altogether. One old woman grips a small charm of rowan wood and whispers prayers until they pass. You can feel the power they hold. Not political power exactly, but something older, more magnetic. As you trail along, one of the younger druids turns slightly and catches your eye. His face is pale beneath the hood, marked with blue woad spirals. He doesn't smile. Best not to follow too close. He says softly, "We walk with more than our shadows." The phrase chills you. He moves on. You stay back. Here's where things get complicated. A fringe tidbit. Some later Christian chroniclers claim that during these midnight rounds, Druids also collected sacrifices, not just food or drink, but sometimes livestock, or in darker whispers, people. There's no concrete proof, but in a world where death and the divine often shared a thin wall, it's easy to imagine extremes. It's possible those rumors were propaganda to paint the Druids as sinister pagans, but it's also possible that, at times, fear demanded something real to burn. Historians still argue whether Druids were feared sorcerers or respected philosophers. Julius Caesar himself described them as both. Men who studied stars and seasons, but also claimed to speak with the dead. They understood nature's cycles so deeply that to outsiders, it looked like magic. By midday, the Druids reached the far edge of the village, where a small altar stands beside a gnarled oak. They gather there, chanting softly while villagers form a loose circle around them. You edge closer, drawn by the low, vibrating sound that seems to make the air itself tremble. The High Druid, an older man with hair like silver wire, raises his staff. "The veil is open," he announces, "but not forever. Before it closes, we honor those who crossed it and those who will." The crowd murmurs agreement. Someone begins to weep quietly. Then the offerings begin. People bring forward bundles of herbs, small figurines of clay, and even locks of hair, tokens representing the living and the dead. Each one is tossed into a small flame at the base of the oak. The smoke rises thick and sweet, carrying the scent of sage and honey. You can't help but notice how calm everyone seems, even as they throw bits of their lives into fire. It's not sacrifice to them, it's insurance. A young mother kneels beside the flame, holding her baby close. "For his first winter," she whispers. The druid nods, touches the child's forehead with soot, and murmurs words in the old tongue. For a moment, it's hard to tell whether he's blessing or binding. Then something unexpected happens. The wind shifts suddenly, hard enough to snuff several torches. The crowd gasps. Smoke twists upward, forming what looks, just for an instant, like a figure standing within the tree's branches. A shape of pure gray light. It's gone before anyone can be sure it was there, but the murmurs spread fast. You glance at the druids, expecting fear or surprise, but they simply bow their heads. "A traveler," one says, "just passing through." You don't know whether to laugh or shiver. The ceremony continues. As the sun dips low, each household receives a small coal from the sacred fire to carry home. It's both literal and symbolic, a shared heartbeat against the cold. You cradle your own ember carefully in a clay pot, the glow painting your fingers gold. It's strange how something so small can feel like protection. On your walk back, you pass through the village again. The fields stretch empty, except for a few cows staring lazily, steam puffing from their nostrils. The air smells faintly of smoke and iron. Somewhere a crow caws 3 times, once for the living, twice for the dead, according to local superstition. You try not to count. You reach your hut, place the ember into your hearth, and watch as the flame catches. For a moment, you think you hear a whisper, like breath exhaling through the walls. Maybe the druid's blessing, maybe just your imagination. Either way, you feel the same comfort generations will later feel when lighting jack-o'-lanterns on their porches. A small, glowing promise that darkness can be tamed, at least for one night. You sit by the new fire, replaying the day in your mind. The cloaked figures, the chants, the unseen traveler in the smoke. You wonder if, thousands of years from now, anyone will still light candles to feel this same sense of safety. You almost laugh at the thought. Surely not. Surely humans will grow past superstition, right? But as you glance into the flames, seeing faces flicker and fade, you realize something quietly eternal. Fear may evolve, but it never disappears. It just learns new costumes. The druids have gone, the offerings burned, the fire lit anew, but the feeling remains, deep and primal, whispering that maybe, just maybe, someone is still walking beside you. By the time generations pass and Rome's banners begin to glint on the horizon, the world around Samhain starts to change, but not as much as you might think. You're still standing on that cold Celtic hill, except now, the sound of hoofbeats belongs not to druids or farmers, but to soldiers with crested helmets and iron discipline. The empire has arrived, and like every empire, it brings its own calendar, its own gods, and its own parties. The Romans don't abolish Samhain. They absorb it. That's their way. When they can't crush a custom, they repaint it. And soon, 2 of their own festivals start blending with the Celtic one, Feralia and the Feast of Pomona. Feralia, held in late October, is a day of honoring the dead, when families visit tombs, offer wine and bread, and whisper to ancestors. It's eerily familiar, isn't it? You can almost picture the villagers setting out food, just as before, except now, they're speaking Latin instead of Gaelic. Historians cite this as the first major Roman-Celtic fusion in the British Isles. The same ritual, different language. The other Roman influence is far sweeter, literally. The Festival of Pomona celebrates the goddess of fruit and orchards. Her symbol? The apple. During this time, Romans decorate altars with apples, pears, and nuts to thank her for the harvest. When their customs collide with the Celtic world, those apples stick, and centuries later, long after the empire falls, you'll still find children dunking their faces into buckets of water, chasing after floating apples, giggling through cold splashes. You can thank Pomona for your Halloween party games. You walk through a Romanized village that feels halfway between 2 worlds. The locals still light fires at the turn of the season, but now small temples stand beside oak groves. Offerings are still made to the dead, but with more ceremony and fewer bones. The language of power has changed, but the heartbeat of fear remains the same. A Roman magistrate in polished armor inspects the fires, scoffing a little. Superstition, he says. These people need law, not charms. And yet, as night falls, you catch him tossing a coin into the flames when he thinks no one is looking. Old habits die harder than empires. A mainstream fact. After Rome conquered the Celtic lands, around 43 CE, they ruled for nearly 4 centuries. Over that time, many pagan traditions blended with Roman customs. Archaeological finds in Britain show offerings that mix Celtic motifs with Roman inscriptions, proving how cultures intertwined. By the 2nd century, even Roman citizens living in Britain were observing local harvest rites that bore suspicious resemblance to Samhain. But not everything merges peacefully. You pass through a market where Roman merchants sell amulets shaped like the goddess Pomona, holding a basket of apples. A local druid scowls, muttering that fruit is no defense against the dark. You can feel tensions simmering beneath the polite trade. It's the age-old struggle between conquering reason and native mystery, between marble temples and mossy groves. As the sun dips, torches flare again. You watch the villagers perform their evening rites, smaller now, more hidden. Instead of vast bonfires on the hills, they gather around modest hearths. The Romans have banned unofficial fire festivals, citing safety and public order, but people still find ways. The human need for ritual doesn't care much for legislation. One woman drops an apple into a bowl of water and lets it float. Her daughter tries to bite it without using her hands, giggling as it slips away. For luck, the mother says, if she catches it, she'll find love. You smile. Same game, same charm, just softened by time. Then comes a fringe tidbit that might surprise you. Some scholars suggest that Romans used their festival of Pomona to promote assimilation through pleasure. Imagine the empire as an early marketing campaign, sweet fruits instead of threats. By merging the joyous harvest with local fear rituals, they rebranded Samhain into something less ominous, more manageable. In a sense, the empire invented the first Halloween PR strategy. Historians still argue whether this blending was deliberate or accidental. Some claim Roman governors strategically timed their festivals to coincide with local ones to maintain peace. Others say people simply found comfort in overlapping celebrations. You can't exactly stop the seasons from changing, after all. The line between politics and coincidence blurs like fog over a field. Night deepens. The stars glint between drifting clouds. You walk past a Roman villa where soldiers feast inside, wine flowing, torches glowing, laughter spilling out into the dark. Just beyond the walls, a group of locals kneel at a small shrine, whispering prayers to the spirits of their ancestors. The two worlds coexist awkwardly, each pretending the other isn't watching. You pause to pick up an apple lying in the grass, its skin catching moonlight. For a second, the reflection almost looks like an eye staring back. You toss it gently, and it rolls toward the trees, disappearing into the shadows. Somewhere an owl hoots. Maybe Pomona smiles. Maybe she doesn't. What's remarkable is how easily one belief becomes another. The villagers call it Samhain. The Romans call it Feralia or Pomonalia. Both see it as a moment when boundaries blur, between harvest and decay, between mortal and divine. They're telling the same story in different tongues. As you stand between firelight and moonlight, you realize this is how traditions survive, not by staying pure, but by adapting. Every time a conqueror claims to replace an old festival, it just hides under a new name, waiting. Samhain isn't dying, it's evolving. You pass through the village one last time that night. In some windows, you see Roman oil lamps flickering beside Celtic carvings. On tables, offerings of wine sit next to bowls of apples. The scent of incense mixes with peat smoke. It's messy, contradictory, alive. And somewhere, beyond both empires and emblems, the dead still walk. They don't care which god you name them for. They only care that you remember. You take a final look at the fires glowing across the hills. The Romans may call it something else, but the meaning hasn't changed. Humans still fear the dark. Humans still crave light. And as you close your eyes, you know this hybrid night, part festival, part farewell, will never truly vanish. It will just keep changing costumes, century after century, waiting for you to find it again. Centuries slide by like shadows across a moonlit field. The Roman banners rot, the legions sail home, and in their place comes something new, something with crosses instead of eagles, psalms instead of chants. The church has arrived, and with it a plan. You stand now in a different village, one stitched from stone and prayer. The fires are smaller, the rituals quieter, but the air still smells faintly of burning herbs. The people haven't forgotten Samhain. They've just learned to pronounce it differently. It's All Hallows Eve now, and the priests say that means holiness. But you can tell by the glint in the villagers' eyes that they know it's the same night wearing a new mask. The church, clever as ever, doesn't destroy the old festival. It baptizes it. That's the genius move of early Christianity. Don't erase, rebrand. In the 8th century, Pope Gregory III declares November 1st as All Saints' Day, or All Hallows' Day, to honor the saints who don't have their own feast. That makes the night before, the familiar night of spirits and shadows, All Hallows' Eve. Eventually, the syllables will collapse into one, Halloween. That's your mainstream fact for tonight. But it's more than a date change. It's a quiet war of symbols. The bonfire becomes a vigil candle. The offerings become alms for the poor. The wandering spirits become saints and souls in need of prayer. The script stays the same, only the cast changes. You watch a priest walking the same path the Druids once walked. His robes are black instead of white, his cross made of wood instead of oak. He stops at doorways, blessing homes with holy water instead of smoke. But when he turns his back, the villagers still whisper their old charms, just in case. You can't be too careful when winter's coming. A child beside you carries a turnip lamp, its crude face glowing in the dark. Saints don't need lights. The priest scolds. The boy lowers his eyes, but keeps the lamp burning. You can almost hear the ancient voice of Samhain laughing softly through the centuries. A fringe tidbit surfaces here. Long before the church officially sanctified the day, small rural parishes in Ireland and Britain already held local feasts for the dead around the same time. It wasn't papal decree that created All Hallows. It was peasant persistence. The church merely caught up. Some records even show that priests initially complained about heathen revelries still being practiced on the eve of the feast. Translation: people were still dancing around fires and wearing animal skins behind the chapel. Historians still argue whether the church's shift was strategic or accidental. Did the clergy deliberately choose November 1st to overwrite Samhain, or did it just happen to overlap? Some think it was a tactical move to ease conversion. Keep your party, just change the guest list. Others believe it evolved naturally, blending theology with habit. The truth, as always, is probably both. The night grows colder. You walk among villagers preparing for the vigil. Some light candles on their windowsills to guide the souls of loved ones to heaven. Others whisper prayers while leaving out small portions of bread. It's supposed to be an act of Christian charity now, but it looks suspiciously like the old spirit offerings. Humans, it seems, can't resist feeding their ghosts. At the edge of the graveyard, a group of children gather with baskets. They go door to door, asking for soul cakes, small round buns marked with crosses. In exchange, they promise to pray for the donor's dead relatives. It's called souling, and it's both touching and slightly eerie, a kind of trick-or-treat. You watch them move through the village, candlelight bobbing in the mist like tiny halos. You try a soul cake yourself, sweet, spiced with nutmeg. The texture is crumbly, the taste oddly comforting. You realize you're eating what used to be an offering for the dead. Now it's dessert. Evolution never tasted so symbolic. As the night deepens, church bells toll, long and heavy, meant to drive away restless spirits. But in the dark corners between the chapels and cottages, you hear laughter, whispers, faint flutes. The villagers may kneel by day, but when night comes, they still honor the old ways. The line between prayer and spell blurs beautifully. You walk to a small hill overlooking the town. Below, candles flicker like stars scattered across the earth. Each light marks a home, remembering someone gone. The air feels charged, sacred, not with fear, but with connection. You realize Halloween isn't just about death. It's about continuity. The living keeping the dead alive through memory, story, ritual. Somewhere behind you, a priest begins a sermon, his voice rising above the wind. Tonight, we honor all hallowed souls. But his echo mingles with a villager humming an ancient tune under her breath. The same haunting melody that once guided spirits home on Samhain nights. You can't tell where the hymn ends and the chant begins. You think of the Druids, the Romans, the villagers with their apple feasts and bonfires, and now this. Candles glowing in church windows. The costumes may change, but the message stays eerily consistent. Respect the unseen, share your fire, and remember that the world isn't only what you can touch. A small girl runs past, carrying a lantern carved from a gourd. The candle inside makes its face grin wickedly. My ma'am says it keeps bad souls away, she chirps before vanishing into the fog. You smile. It's the old charm reborn. Same superstition, new theology. And as you walk back toward the village square, bells still ringing, you can't help but wonder if the church realizes what it's done. In trying to bury Samhain, it's preserved it. In trying to bless the night, it's kept its mystery alive. The veil is thinner than ever, not just between the living and the dead, but between the sacred and the profane, faith and folklore. You can feel both worlds breathing in unison. You take one last look at the sky. The moon glows faint behind drifting clouds, a pale coin in the blackness. Somewhere out there, the old gods and the new saints nod politely to one another, sharing the same night like old roommates who've stopped fighting. And as the bells fade, replaced by the crackle of hidden fires, you realize that Halloween, the real Halloween, isn't born from either side. It's born from the spaces in between. By the time the church's grip tightens over Europe, the world has already found new ways to rebel in secret. You can still feel the old spirit of Samhain humming beneath the floorboards of medieval towns, hiding under Latin hymns and candlelight. The priests might call it All Hallows Eve now, but the villagers? They still know it as the night when the dead walk and the living better play along. You wander through a village somewhere in 14th century England. The air smells of smoke, damp straw, and rain. Cobblestone streets glisten under torchlight, and the church bell tolls 9 times, a reminder that curfew is near. Still, the night buzzes with quiet mischief. Children run through the alleys with sacks slung over their shoulders, knocking on doors and chanting, "Soul, soul, for a soul cake." You watch one door creak open. A weary woman drops 2 small buns into a child's sack. The child bows, then recites quickly, "One for Peter, one for Paul, 3 for them that made us all," before sprinting away into the mist. It's adorable and slightly creepy, and you can't help but grin. The prayers may be real, but so is the sugar rush. This is souling, the medieval cousin of trick-or-treating, in your mainstream fact tonight. It spread across Britain and parts of Europe between the 12th and 15th centuries. The poor, especially children, would go door to door offering prayers for the dead in exchange for food. In some towns, they'd even carry hollowed turnips or candles to light their way. You could call it the church's version of crowdsourced salvation. Pray for enough stranger souls, and maybe someone will return the favor for yours someday. But even in this new holy packaging, the older, wilder silent heartbeat won't die quietly. You notice a few teenagers sneaking around the corner, faces smudged with ash, wearing ragged cloaks turned inside out. They're not begging, they're mocking. Their laughter echoes off the stone walls as they toss handfuls of dirt at windows and run before being caught. A different kind of ritual, mischief, not prayer. Here's a fringe tidbit you'll enjoy. Medieval accounts from Ireland and Scotland describe geysers, who roamed on All Hallows Eve performing songs, jokes, or small pranks in exchange for food. Some even claim to represent the wandering dead themselves. If the household refused their request, the geysers might retaliate by smearing soot on the door or hiding tools. Sound familiar? It's an early form of trick or treat, minus the mini chocolate bars. Historians still argue whether these geysers were tolerated as part of tradition or feared as potential bringers of bad luck. Some church records scold them harshly, labeling their antics diabolic misrule. But the villagers didn't seem to mind. Every autumn, the same laughter returned with the same disguises. It's as if people needed to poke fun at death to keep from being swallowed by it. As you stroll farther into the town, you pass the tavern. Its door bursts open, spilling warmth, light, and noise into the street. Inside, men sing loudly about saints, devils, and ale, sometimes all in the same verse. You hear one of them slur, "To the dead and to the living, may none of us stay where we are." Everyone roars with laughter. You sip a mug of cider and feel that familiar warmth, the kind that blurs the line between fear and joy. The church pretends this night is about solemn remembrance, but the people know better. It's the one evening when death feels friendly, when the cemetery isn't terrifying but communal. You walk past the churchyard and see candles glowing on the graves. Families sit on the damp grass, eating and talking softly. The wind carries the smell of roasted chestnuts and candle wax. For a moment, it feels like the living and dead are simply neighbors catching up. You stop at one grave where a small loaf of bread sits untouched. The inscription is worn, unreadable. He died of the plague. An old man says quietly beside you, "We bring him something each year, just in case he still walks." You nod, because what else do you say to that? Later that night, you follow the sounds of distant laughter toward the edge of town. A group of masked youths dance around a dying bonfire. The masks are crude, wood, rags, a bit of leather, and yet, in the flickering light, they seem alive. You notice one wears a crown of twisted vines. Another's mask is painted white with hollow eyes. They dance faster, stamping their boots, tossing sparks into the sky. Someone starts a chant, half prayer, half dare. When the wind picks up, the fire throws shadows against the nearby chapel wall. The silhouettes of the dancers look like writhing spirits, merging and separating in a blur. It's mesmerizing. Then, from the shadows, you hear an older voice hiss, "Blasphemy." A priest steps into the clearing, holding a cross high. "Go home," he shouts. "This is not the Lord's feast." The dancers freeze for a moment. Then one of them, probably the one with the vine crown, laughs. "It's everyone's feast," he calls back, before bolting into the dark. The rest scatter, laughing wildly, their voices fading into the night. The priest curses, stomps out the fire, and trudges back toward town. But you can tell he's shaken. Maybe it's the shadows, Maybe it's the realization that no sermon can fully silence what's older than his faith. When you walk back through the village, the streets are empty. The candles in the windows have burned low. The moon slides between clouds like a pale ghost. You think about how many centuries this single night has survived, through conquest, plague, and doctrine. It's like a stubborn ember in humanity's pocket, refusing to die. And then, just as you reach your door, you see something small and eerie. A single child sitting on the steps, face hidden behind a paper mask, holding a bowl. You open your mouth to ask if he's lost, but before you can speak, he whispers, "A soul for a soul." The voice is too calm, too rehearsed. You blink, and he's gone. The bowl remains, filled with crumbs. Maybe it's just a prank. Maybe not. Either way, you carry the bowl inside and set it near the hearth, beside the dying flame. Because after all these centuries, one rule hasn't changed. Better to feed what you don't understand. You fall asleep to the faint sound of bells and laughter blending in the distance, holy and haunted at once. Halloween, still trying to decide which side of heaven it belongs on. Morning light spills through a sky the color of pewter, and the smell of damp soil mixes with something faintly sweet. Turnips, freshly cut. You follow the scent down a narrow dirt road, past stone cottages draped in ivy, until you find an old man crouched outside, carving into a bulbous white root. His knife scrapes softly, rhythmically, and every so often he pauses to squint, mutter, and chuckle to himself. You lean closer, and there it is, the first jack-o'-lantern. But it's not orange. It's ghostly pale, its hollowed eyes glowing with the tiny flame of a tallow candle. "Keep the dead from knocking," the old man says without looking up. Or at least make him laugh when they do. You crouch beside him, curiosity outweighing comfort. The carved face isn't cheerful. It's twisted in a crooked grin, half menace, half mischief. He sets it on the windowsill, its light flickering through the fog. "Jack's light," he adds, to guide him, or keep him away. Depends who you ask. And here's your mainstream fact. Long before pumpkins ever entered the story, people in Ireland and Scotland carved lanterns from turnips, rutabagas, and beets during Halloween. They weren't decorations, they were warnings. These lanterns represented wandering souls and were meant to ward off evil spirits or the devil himself. The American pumpkin version only arrived centuries later, when immigrants found a bigger, easier to carve substitute across the Atlantic. You ask the man who Jack is, and he leans back, eyes glinting. "Ah, you don't know the tale? Then listen." He tells you the legend of Stingy Jack, the Irishman so cunning he managed to trick the devil twice. The story goes like this. Jack invited the devil for a drink, but refused to pay for it, convincing the devil to turn himself into a coin to settle the tab. Instead of spending it, Jack slipped the coin into his pocket beside a silver cross, trapping the devil there. Later, he freed him, but only after securing a promise that his soul would never be taken to hell. Years later, Jack dies, of course. Heaven refuses him for his sins. Hell won't take him because of the deal. So Jack is condemned to wander the earth, carrying a single ember given by the devil to light his way, a glowing coal he keeps inside a hollowed turnip. Thus, he becomes Jack of the Lantern, or Jack-o'-lantern. You can't help but grin. So he's the world's first trickster? Or its last fool, the old man says. Depend how much you drink before the telling. It's a good story, a perfect mix of moral, mockery, and menace. But it also serves another purpose. In a time when Christianity and old folklore coexist uneasily, tales like Jack's keep both sides satisfied. The church can use it as a warning about greed and sin, while the villagers hear it as a reminder that cleverness might just outwit the devil himself. A fringe tidbit for you. Some folklorists suspect that the Jack legend fused older Celtic myths about wandering spirits known as will-o'-the-wisps. Those mysterious ghost lights seen hovering over bogs. People once believed they were souls trapped between worlds, or fairy lights luring travelers to their doom. In some Gaelic dialects, those lights were called jack-o'-lanterns long before the human trickster appeared. It's possible the man came after the myth, not the other way around. Historians still argue whether Jack was ever a real folktale figure or a convenient narrative the Irish used to explain natural phenomena. Maybe it started as a metaphor for swamp gas igniting in the dark. Maybe it was always meant to be something spookier. Either way, it stuck, glowing stubbornly through every generation. As the day fades into evening, the cottages around you light their own little jacks. Every window sprouts a glowing face, some grim, some silly, some so bizarre you can't tell whether they're meant to scare or amuse. The fields flicker with dots of light, and from a distance, the village looks alive with tiny, grinning spirits. Children gather outside, daring each other to walk down the unlit paths between the houses. One girl insists she saw Jack himself wandering near the churchyard last year, holding a lantern just like ours, only brighter. Her brother scoffs, but not convincingly. They run off laughing, more thrilled than afraid. You follow the road toward the marsh. The fog there is thick and silver, swallowing your footsteps. Every few seconds, a dim light flickers ahead, then fades. Another glows to your right. You know it's probably just the villagers' lanterns. Probably. Still, the hair on your arms rises. You remember how people used to believe these lights were spirits of the dead. Or worse, fairy tricks meant to lure the living into swamps. The idea feels almost believable in this kind of night. You spot an old stone bridge spanning a slow, black river. At its center sits another carved turnip, smaller, burning low. It's cracked down one side, leaking faint smoke. You lean closer, and for a heartbeat, it seems like the grin widens. Then a gust of wind snuffs it out. The darkness folds around you like a coat. When you make your way back, the village is alive again. Music, laughter, the smell of roasted apples and peat fires. A fiddler plays something bright and crooked, half lullaby, half dance tune. People tell ghost stories beside the hearth, their faces orange from lamplight. Someone swears they heard footsteps on the roof earlier. Another insists it was just Jack looking for warmth. You can't help but notice how everyone, even the most devout, relaxes in a superstition tonight. It's not rebellion anymore. It's tradition. The church no longer fights the fear. It tolerates it, domesticated and wrapped in humor. The festival has evolved from survival rite to social ritual, from appeasing ghosts to entertaining them. You hold a candle up to your own carved turnip, lighting it slowly. The wax drips, pooling like molten gold. The flicker paints the room in soft shadows, and for a moment, the carved grin feels almost companionable. You realize something quietly profound. Every generation before you has done this, lit a small light to face the dark. It's not really about scaring spirits away. It's about proving you're still here. Somewhere outside, a voice calls, "Good night, Jack," and the wind answers with a low whistle through the fields. Maybe it's the breeze. Maybe not. Either way, you smile and whisper back, "See you next year." The lantern on your sill flares once more before settling into a steady glow, guarding the long, cold night. And for the first time, you understand how a story can outlive even the people who tell it. By now, centuries have rolled by like autumn fog, and the world has learned new ways to be afraid. The old druids are gone. The saints have multiplied. And Europe, oh, poor Europe, is about to choke on its own superstition. You wake up in the 16th century, and it smells like damp parchment, candle smoke, and fear. This is the age of witches. You step into a village square paved with mud and tension. Everyone's eyes dart to the sky, half expecting the devil to drop by uninvited. Cats are being avoided, women are being whispered about, and Halloween, or rather, All Hallows Eve, has taken on a sharper edge. You can feel it in the air. The church's message has shifted. The night of remembrance has become a night of suspicion. The same fires once meant to guide the dead are now seen as invitations to evil. A gust of wind rattles the chapel door, and someone crosses themselves. Even the moonlight feels accusatory. Mainstream fact: by the late medieval and early modern periods, belief in witchcraft had reached a fever pitch across Europe. The church and state both sanctioned witch trials, convinced that dark rituals and demonic pacts threatened Christian order. Between the 15th and 18th centuries, tens of thousands of people, mostly women, were executed on charges of witchcraft. And yet, even as fear strangled reason, the old festival survived, shape-shifting once again. You wander through an English village where the people still light candles for the dead and wear simple masks, but now they call it warding, a kind of holy disguise to confuse witches. The irony is almost too perfect. You hear whispers in the tavern about a woman named Agnes, poor, quiet Agnes, who was seen gathering herbs at dusk. Healing herbs, she swears, but her neighbors call them curses. Someone claims she danced under the old oak during last year's All Hallows Eve. Someone else says she talked to her cat like it was listening. The conclusion is as inevitable as winter. She's a witch. You visit her cottage the night before her arrest. She's sitting by the hearth, crushing leaves in a wooden bowl. You're welcome to watch, she says without fear. Everyone does these days. Her eyes are tired, but her voice is calm. They've forgotten that the old ways fed them when no one else would. She gestures toward a jar of dried rowan berries. Protection charms, she explains, but they'll say it's devil's work. They always do when they're afraid. A fringe tidbit: historians have uncovered trial records where the accused were charged not with harming others, but with keeping Halloween-like traditions, lighting candles, offering bread to wandering souls, or wearing charms made from bones. In some rural areas, even carving faces into vegetables was deemed suspiciously pagan. The very customs meant to ward off evil were suddenly labeled as its proof. Historians still argue whether witch hysteria was driven more by theology or by politics. Was it really about faith or about control, keeping women, healers, and outsiders in check? Most likely, it was both. Religion giving voice to the anxieties of a world changing too fast for comfort. You step outside into the cold. The wind smells of iron and rain. The villagers are gathering again. Hoods up, torches lit. The same tools once used to celebrate the harvest now light the path for accusation. You can't help but notice how ritual and mob fury look almost identical in the dark. As you follow them, you think back to Samhain's fires, the laughter, the disguises, the sacred balance between fear and gratitude. How strange that the same flame once meant to honor the unseen has become a weapon against it. They drag Agnes to the square, tie her to a post. She doesn't cry, doesn't beg. "You're celebrating your fear wrong," she says softly. Nobody listens. The torches flare, and her shadow dances on the walls just like those villagers long ago, wearing masks of fur and bone. Only now, the dance is shorter. The night doesn't forgive as easily as it used to. When it's over, Silence settles thick as fog. Someone mutters a prayer. Someone else whispers that the devil has been purged. But you feel no victory in the air, only exhaustion. The same old fears still sits at the table, just wearing new robes. You walk away, toward the fields where the stars shine, faint and cold. The earth smells burnt, the air raw. It's strange, isn't it? Every time humanity thinks it's exorcised darkness, it just reinvents it. Once it was ghosts, then it was witches. Later, it'll be something else. But even in this brutal chapter, the heart of Halloween endures. You hear it in the wind. Children humming old tunes while skipping stones. Farmers whispering charms as they lock their doors. The rhythm of fear and laughter, caution and celebration. By the 17th century, the witch trials begin to fade. Rationalism is on the rise. The Enlightenment is peeking through the fog. But the scars remain. Every whisper, every superstition, every flicker of distrust becomes part of the festival's DNA. Halloween inherits not just the joy of play acting, but the shadow of accusation. A night for masks, and for remembering what happens when the masks are torn away. You sit by a small stream, watching your reflection waver in the moonlight. Somewhere behind you, a black cat slips silently through the grass. You almost call out to it, but stop yourself. Old habits die hard. You remember the villagers' warnings, the burned woman, the frightened prayers. Then the cat pauses, looks straight at you, and blinks slowly, as if to say you're learning. It disappears into the dark, tail high, leaving only the faint echo of a purr and the smell of wood smoke drifting from a distant hearth. You breathe in the night. It's quieter now, almost peaceful. The fires of hate have cooled, but the embers of mystery still glow. Halloween will carry both, the warmth of memory and the chill of fear, into every new century it meets. You realize something important as the wind stirs the leaves around your feet. Witches never really die. They just change shape. Sometimes they wear cloaks, sometimes lab coats, sometimes microphones. Anyone who understands the dark and chooses to light a candle anyway, they're part of the lineage. You stand, brushing the dirt from your hands, and whisper a quiet apology to the night. For every Agnes who burned and every Jack who wandered, the mist swirls, the moon tilts, and somewhere far off, a faint laugh curls through the air like smoke. Maybe it's hers. You awaken to a different kind of chill, briny air, wooden decks, the creak of masts above you. The world has changed again. The old superstitions are boarding ships now, stowing away with travelers who can't quite leave their ghost behind. You're crossing the Atlantic, and Halloween, like any persistent spirit, is coming with you. The year is somewhere in the 1800s. The Irish are fleeing famine, the Scots chasing hope, and both are packing their traditions between loaves of bread and folded linens. Samhain, All Hallows Eve, whatever name you give it, has hitched a ride to the New World. You lean over the ship's rail, the ocean stretching black and endless beneath you, and you wonder what the dead make of it. This long journey over an even darker sea. When the ship docks, everything feels sharper. The light, the smell, the ambition. America is raw and sprawling, half wilderness, half experiment. It's a land obsessed with the future, but constantly haunted by its own myths. The immigrants unpack their trunks and their fears. Along with songs and stories, they bring a single shared certainty. October 31st is not a night to ignore. In small coastal towns, the customs take root like weeds. Bonfires spark again, though now they burn near barns instead of stone circles. Children begin playing tricks on neighbors, tipping over outhouses, swapping wagons, untying livestock. The idea of mischief isn't new, but here it takes on a distinctly American flavor. Bold, brazen, and mostly harmless. Mainstream fact: it was Irish and Scottish immigrants who first carried Halloween traditions to North America in the 19th century. They brought souling, guising, and the story of Stingy Jack. Over time, these merged with other fall festivals, especially the colonial harvest celebrations already held across the country. You find yourself in a small village in Massachusetts. The trees a blur of red and gold. The locals are skeptical at first. To Puritans, anything resembling the supernatural smacks of blasphemy. But curiosity wins. Children carve turnips and beets into lanterns. Older folks tell ghost tales by firelight. And someone, always someone, hears knocking at the window when no one's there. By the mid-1800s, the holiday starts taking on its American accent. Pumpkins, native to the continent, replace turnips. They're bigger, brighter, and far easier to carve. Soon, the jack-o'-lantern becomes an icon, its orange grin spreading across the countryside. The first documented pumpkin lanterns appear around this time, and within decades, they're everywhere. The Irish trickster Jack has finally found a permanent home. You watch a farmer hollowing out one of these massive gourds, scooping stringy flesh by the fire. Makes the kids laugh, he says. Keeps the dark away. You smile. He doesn't know it, but he's repeating a 2,000-year-old philosophy. Light something, laugh a little, and the shadows can't take you. Here's a fringe tidbit. Some historians note that in certain rural American towns, Halloween merged briefly with Thanksgiving. Yes, really. There were reports of late October feasts and pranks labeled Cabbage Night or Gate Night, where young people uprooted vegetables or swapped front gates between houses. It was equal parts chaos and celebration, a rustic blend of harvest gratitude and supernatural mischief. Historians still argue whether these antics were direct descendants of Celtic mumming or simply local inventions that happened to echo the old patterns. But you can feel the rhythm, the same push and pull between reverence and rebellion, the same need to face the dark with laughter. You walk through an American town square as dusk settles. Children chase one another between lampposts. Lanterns flicker on porches. The air smells of wood smoke and sweet corn. At the center of the square, a preacher warns that the devil still walks on Halloween. A few folks nod solemnly, but others wink and smile, slipping apples into their pockets for later bobbing. The night has already won. You notice something remarkable: the way Halloween adapts to its new land. It sheds the heavy religious overtones, trims the guilt, and keeps the fun. In a country built on reinvention, the festival reinvents itself too. It becomes a community event, less about spirits, more about stories. Ghosts still linger, but now they're literary. Tales told around fires, inked in newspapers, staged at parlor readings. One evening, you find yourself listening to a young writer from New York reading aloud a story about a headless horseman chasing a nervous schoolteacher. You grin. Washington Irving's The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, published in 1820, isn't technically a Halloween story, but it might as well be. It's America's first ghost tale of fame, and it plants the seed for everything that will come. The haunted houses, the dark humor, the love of a good fright. A cold wind picks up as the reading ends. The listeners laugh, uneasy but delighted. They'll tell the story again tomorrow and the day after, until Headless Horseman lore bleeds into Halloween tradition. Fear has found a new stage. By the late 19th century, Irish immigrants have brought even more of their Halloween customs to bustling cities like Boston, New York, and Chicago. Children wander the streets with paper lanterns, knocking on doors for treats or pennies. Mischief is still rampant, but there's joy now, not malice. In a country obsessed with growth, even fear gets commercialized. You sit on a porch as a group of kids parade by dressed in homemade costumes. Sheet ghosts, paper witches, one child wearing an actual pumpkin on his head. Trick or treat, they shout. It's not yet a national catchphrase, but you can feel it forming in the air, waiting for its century. Somewhere behind you, a fiddler plays a reel. Adults sip cider and tell ghost stories borrowed from the old world and repackaged for the new. The harvest moon rises huge and golden, washing the landscape in light. You realize you're watching Halloween evolve again, simplified, softened, but still pulsing with that same ancient energy. You lean back in your chair, the wood creaking beneath you. The laughter of children fades down the street, replaced by the hoot of an owl. You think about how this festival has crossed oceans, burned through faiths, and outlived empires by simply making itself useful. It gives people permission to fear, to laugh, to pretend, to remember. The candle in your pumpkin gutters and flares, casting one last grin on your face before it goes out. You whisper, "See you next year," and somewhere in the wind, a faint Irish accent answers back, "You will." Halloween has survived the crossing, and America, though it doesn't know it yet, has given it immortality. By the time the calendar drifts into the late 1800s, the world looks softer. Lace curtains instead of bonfires, carriages instead of torches. But the ghost of Samhain is still sitting quietly in the corner, sipping cider, pretending to be civilized. The Victorians have arrived, and Halloween is about to get a makeover. You stand in a parlor lit by oil lamps, the walls covered in floral wallpaper and moral anxiety. A group of young women gathers around a table draped in velvet, a candle flickering in the center. They giggle nervously as one of them reads from a booklet titled Games for All Hallows Eve. It says, she begins dramatically, "If you peel an apple in one long strip and throw it over your shoulder, the shape it lands and will spell the initial of your true love." Everyone gasps. Someone actually tries it, squealing when the peel lands in a perfect S. This is Halloween in the Victorian age. Less about ghosts that haunt, more about hearts that flutter. It's romantic, tame, and politely spooky. Mainstream fact: by the late 19th century, Halloween in America had begun shifting from a rough, rural night of pranks into a genteel social occasion. Victorian etiquette manuals and women's magazines promoted safe Halloween parties with ghost stories, fortune-telling games, and fall-themed decorations. Instead of appeasing spirits, people entertain guests. You can smell caramel and burning wax. Tables are decorated with pumpkins carved into smiling faces. Not demonic, just whimsical. Children bob for apples in polished silver basins. Candied nuts and cinnamon donuts fill the air with sugar and nostalgia. It feels strangely wholesome, like Samhain decided to wear a corset. The host, a woman in a high-neck gown, raises her glass. "To the dear departed," she says, smiling sweetly, "and to those not yet gone." The guests laugh, a little too loudly. They like flirting with the macabre, as long as it's wearing gloves. Here's a fringe tidbit. Seances became a Halloween staple in Victorian parlors, thanks to the spiritualist movement. Mediums, often middle-class women, claimed they could contact the dead through table tapping and automatic writing. One famous medium, Kate Fox, would draw hundreds of guests into darkened rooms to speak with spirits. Whether she truly channeled voices or merely echoed grief, people wanted to believe. You watch one such seance unfold. The lights dim. The medium closes her eyes and breathes heavily. "Is there anyone with us tonight?" she whispers. A chair creaks. Someone gasps. You glance at the window, open just enough for the wind to tease the curtains. The flame on the candle trembles dramatically. When it's over, everyone swears they felt something. Maybe they did. The Victorians were masters at blending belief and performance until you couldn't tell them apart. Historians still argue whether the popularity of seances was a reaction to loss, the Civil War, epidemics, industrial accidents, or simply a fashionable parlor trick. Perhaps both. When death becomes too frequent, you either cry or monetize it. The Victorians chose lace-trimmed sorrow. Outside, the air cools. You walk past houses strung with paper lanterns shaped like pumpkins. Children skip rope, singing rhymes about ghosts that fly in white and witches that dance till daylight. It's no longer about survival or sacrifice. It's pageantry. And yet, something ancient still hums beneath the surface. You see in the way people glance over their shoulders after laughing, as if expecting something to laugh back. You feel it in the chill that always seems to arrive exactly when the clock strikes midnight. Halloween may be domesticated, but it's not entirely housebroken. You stop by a shop window filled with postcards. One shows a cherubic, pumpkin-headed man tipping his hat. A jolly Halloween to you. Another features a black cat sitting beside a broom. The text reads, "Good luck, or else." You smile at how commercialized it's become. Even fear, it seems, has an advertising department now. Still, there's something charming in this new form. The Victorians, with all their prudish manners and repressed desires, have turned Halloween into a night of permission. Women can flirt. Men can act foolish. Kids can run wild for a few hours. It's rebellion disguised as respectability. At one party, you watch guests play a game called Mirror Prophecy. Each person holds a candle and gazes into a mirror, hoping to glimpse the face of their future spouse, or their own ghostly reflection. One young woman screams softly, claiming she saw a shadow behind her. Everyone laughs, but no one dares look at the mirror again. You lean over it afterward and see only your own reflection, eyes darker than usual. Maybe it's the candlelight. Maybe not. Later that night, you wander down to the garden. The air is cool and perfumed with chrysanthemums. Lanterns sway gently in the breeze, their light catching dew on the grass. You can hear faint music drifting from the parlor, mixed with laughter and clinking glasses. And yet, in the distance, an owl hoots, a reminder that the night, however civilized, still belongs to older gods. You pause beside a carved pumpkin, its grin calm and knowing. The candle inside flickers low, then steadies, as if aware you're watching. You realize that this polite reinvention might actually be the festival's smartest trick yet. It's hiding in plain sight. Even as science flourishes and industry hums, people still crave a night when logic loosens its grip. They still need a ritual that whispers, it's okay to believe in nonsense for a while. Halloween has found a new disguise, nostalgia. Historians will later look back and call this era the festival's domestication. But you can tell it's something subtler. The Victorians didn't tame Halloween. They simply taught it to sit quietly on a velvet cushion until everyone else fell asleep. Then, when the candles burned low and the guests went home, it would slip back into the garden, barefoot and grinning, same as it ever was. You leave the house just before dawn. The last lanterns flicker out, and fog curls along the hedges. Somewhere, a single black cat sits on the gatepost, tail twitching. It stares at you, unblinking, as if to say, "You didn't think it was gone, did you?" You nod to the cat, whisper good night, and walk into the mist, carrying with you the faint echo of laughter, the scent of apples, and the soft, relentless heartbeat of a festival that refuses to die. You wake to the sound of chaos, A different kind of chaos this time. Not ancient chanting or ritual drums, but the clang of garbage lids, laughter echoing down brick alleys, and the occasional shout of, "You'll pay for that, you hooligans." Welcome to America in the early 20th century, where Halloween has officially lost its manners. Gone are the polite parlor games and apple-bobbing soirees. The industrial age has rolled in, bringing cities, crowds, and restless kids with too much energy. You're standing on a street corner in 1920 Chicago, and the night feels alive in a new way. Smoke from factory chimneys mingles with the bite of autumn air. The streetlights glow hazy yellow through the smog, casting long, mischievous shadows. A group of boys runs past you, faces masked with paper sacks and soot. One carries a stick with a dangling tin can, clattering it against fences. "Trick night," they shout. You watch as they rearrange someone's front gate, soap windows, and, oh lovely, tip over a barrel of ash. "The spirits made us do it," one of them calls out, laughing. This is Halloween's rebellious adolescence. Mainstream fact: by the early 1900s, Halloween pranks had become a national phenomenon in North America. In cities like New York, Boston, and Detroit, youth took to the streets for nights of mischief that often verged on vandalism, breaking streetlights, toppling outhouses, even derailing trolley cars. Newspapers called it the annual war on property. You walk through a neighborhood where every porch light flickers nervously. The adults are bracing for impact, armed with buckets of water and stern lectures. Some towns even hire extra police patrols. The old spirit of Samhain, once sacred, then social, has turned juvenile. Humans have found a new way to honor the dead, by terrifying the living. But amidst the chaos, something else is forming, a new social contract. Homeowners begin to realize that maybe, just maybe, it's easier to bribe the pranksters than to fight them. So, they start leaving treats by the door. Candied apples, peanuts, homemade fudge. A bargain is born. Behave, and you'll get sugar. Misbehave, and you'll get a bucket of cold water. Or worse, a disappointed glare from Mrs. Henderson down the street. This, right here, is the seed of modern trick-or-treating. You follow a group of costumed children, ghosts made of bed sheets, cowboys with cardboard hats, a flapper wearing her mother's pearls, knocking politely on doors and chanting, "Help the poor, or we'll pull your door." It's not quite the phrase we know yet, but it's close enough. Each house rewards them with small sweets or spare change. You can feel the ancient balance returning, offering and request, gift and peace. Samhain's old currency of fear and respect is alive again, only now it's covered in chocolate. Here's a fringe tidbit. Some historians argue that trick-or-treating spread partly due to neighborhood civic campaigns during the Great Depression. In the 1930s, communities desperate to curb vandalism promoted safe Halloween activities, costume parades, school parties, and supervised door-to-door visits. Candy companies caught on quickly, and by the 1950s, the ritual was cemented nationwide. Historians still argue whether the practice evolved organically or through calculated marketing. Was it an innocent revival of old, guising traditions, or the first true corporate spell cast over the holiday? Maybe both. You find yourself in 1930s America now. The Great Depression has stripped glamour from everything, even holidays. But Halloween endures. Children in patched costumes roam dusty streets, holding tin pails and shouting, "Trick or treat." A woman in a faded apron drops a single caramel into each pail. "You kids behave now," she says with a tired smile. You can see she's exhausted, but still willing to share sweetness in a bitter time. That's Halloween's quiet magic. It gives people a reason to keep pretending that generosity can outshine fear. Later that night, you join a crowd gathered around a fire in an empty lot. Someone's playing a harmonica. Others roast marshmallows on sticks. A man tells ghost stories about haunted mines and headless train conductors. The children huddle close, wide-eyed, the orange light painting their faces like living jack-o'-lanterns. For a few hours, everyone forgets hunger and hardship. The night doesn't feel cruel anymore. It feels human. The 1940s bring war, and even Halloween takes a brief breath. Sugar rationing halts candy production. Neighborhood celebrations grow quieter. But once peace returns, America celebrates harder than ever. By the late 1940s, candy companies flood the market with small, individually wrapped sweets designed specifically for trick-or-treaters. You see posters in shop windows. Be generous. Halloween comes but once a year. The corporate cauldron has officially begun to bubble. You stand on a suburban street in 1953. Lawns are trimmed, houses identical, and every porch glows with smiling pumpkins. The children's costumes are store-bought now. Witches, skeletons, astronauts, tiny pirates. Parents follow behind with flashlights, chatting amiably. The wild, dangerous mischief of old is gone, replaced by good manners and milk chocolate. But listen closely. The laughter still has a faint echo of something older, wilder. A kid dressed as a devil grins up at you. Trick or treat, he chirps, holding out a plastic pumpkin. You drop in a handful of candy corn and say, "You know, the devil used to get more respect." He laughs, not understanding, and runs off. You can't help but smile. Halloween has survived plagues, churches, and witch hunts. It's not about a die in suburbia. It just needed new costumes. As you walk home, the neighborhood glows like a constellation of little fires. Each porch light another version of the Samhain flame. Inside every house, families sit together, sorting candy, telling stories, maybe watching a monster movie before bed. It's peaceful, predictable, and oddly comforting. But don't be fooled. The dark hasn't gone anywhere. It's just waiting for its next cue. And as the night deepens, a whisper drifts through the leaves, a reminder from every century before this one. Play nice, keep the lights on, and never forget who started the party. You glance back at the rows of carved pumpkins, their grins flickering in unison. For a moment, they look less like decorations and more like watchers. Ancient, amused, patient. The world thinks it's tamed Halloween. You know better. You wake to the flicker of silver light, the hum of a film reel, and the smell of buttered popcorn. The bonfires have turned into movie screens now, and Halloween, ever adaptable, is ready for its close-up. The year is somewhere in the 1930s, maybe 1940s. The world has survived depression, war, and ration cards, but tonight it wants something simpler. A good scare that doesn't cost much. You're sitting in a dark theater. On screen, a man in a cape moves through a castle corridor. He turns, eyes glinting like wet coal, and whispers in an accent thicker than candle wax. "I never drink wine." The audience gasps. A woman screams softly. Somewhere behind you, a teenager laughs nervously. Welcome to the age of cinematic monsters. Mainstream fact. Beginning in the 1930s, Universal Studios created an entire pantheon of horror icons. Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, and The Wolfman. These films didn't just entertain. They defined how the world imagined Halloween for the next century. You can feel it happening, right here in the dark. Fear turning glamorous. The monsters of ancient nightmare, the spirits of Samhain, the ghosts of medieval lore, are suddenly beautiful, tragic, charismatic. The vampire isn't a warning anymore. He's a celebrity. After the film, you wander the streets. Store windows display masks shaped like Lugosi's fangs, Karloff's bolts, and Cheney's snarling fur. Children press their noses to the glass, wide-eyed. "I want to be Frankenstein," one shouts. His mother sighs. "You already are, some mornings." The transformation is complete. What once terrified the village now sells for $1.29 with elastic string included. You pass a newsstand. The headlines scream about war in Europe, rationing, blackouts. And yet, right beside them, a poster advertises Universal's House of Horrors Halloween Marathon. Fear has become escapism, a form of comfort. When the real world is unbearable, make-believe terror feels almost gentle. A fringe tidbit. Early Hollywood promoters deliberately released horror films around late October, knowing that audiences already associated the season with death and darkness. It was marketing alchemy, reviving the energy of Samhain through popcorn and projection. In some theaters, ushers even dressed as vampires or mummies. For one night, you could pay 15 cents to experience thousands of years of ritual fear without actually dying. Historians still argue whether this era commercialized or democratized horror. Did the silver screen cheapen old legends, or give them immortality? You can't help but think it did both. The monster costume aisle owes everything to Universal's black and white dreams. You wander into a Halloween party hosted by college students in the 1950s. Jazz hums from a record player. Streamers hang from the ceiling. On the snack table, popcorn balls, candy corn, and a punch bowl that probably violates 3 laws of chemistry. A girl in a Dracula cape sips from a paper cup, grinning. "It's funny," she says. "My grandmother used to say Halloween was evil. Now she helps me sew my costume." You glance around. There's a witch dancing with a cowboy, a skeleton doing the jitterbug. Someone taped a paper or goes to the refrigerator, and it keeps fluttering every time the door opens. It's messy, ridiculous, wonderful. Television soon joins the seance. You flip through channels and find Halloween specials popping up everywhere. Cartoons, comedies, even variety shows. In 1966, it's The Great Pumpkin. Charlie Brown airs for the first time. Kids across America sit cross-legged in front of glowing screens, watching Linus wait in a pumpkin patch for a mythical figure that never arrives. It's gentle, wistful, and quietly profound. For the first time in centuries, Halloween becomes safe for the whole family. Still, not all the ghosts have been tamed. You move through the decades and see the shadows grow longer again. The 1970s arrive, and with them, a new breed of horror. The movie Halloween hits theaters in 1978, introducing Michael Myers and his endless night of suburban terror. The film is low budget, minimalist, terrifying, and revolutionary. It reclaims fear from fantasy and plants it squarely in your neighborhood. You step outside a drive-in theater just after a showing. The crowd is half laughing, half shaken. "It's just a movie," one man insists. His friend nods too quickly. Behind them, the wind pushes a paper cup down the pavement. Somewhere, a porch light flickers. The distance between real life and fiction has never felt thinner. It's fascinating, isn't it? For thousands of years, Halloween has moved between reverence and rebellion. But here it finds perfect balance again. Ritual fear wrapped in entertainment. You can scream, then go home safe. You can look death in the eye for 90 minutes and still be tucked in by midnight. The campfire has become a cinema. Here's another whisper of irony. The same church that once tried to ban Samhain now hosts harvest festivals with haunted houses and costume contests. Corporate America sells fear in bite-sized portions, and people can't get enough. Plastic skeletons replace real ones. Fake cobwebs dangle where druids once hung charms. Yet beneath the neon and noise, the old pulse remains steady. It's all theater, sure, but then again, maybe theater was always the point. You pass a store window glowing with orange lights. Inside, masks, rubber bats, polyester capes. A speaker hums with eerie organ music. A little girl tugs at her father's sleeve. "Can I be a ghost this year?" she asks. He smiles. "You were a fairy last time." She shrugs. "Ghosts are cooler." You can't help but grin. The ancient Celts would have approved. You step outside again into the cool October air. The night hums with life. Movie posters flutter, costume shops buzz, televisions glow in living rooms across the suburbs. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wails. A car backfires. For a moment, it all blends together into a modern incantation. Electric, chaotic, alive. And you realize Halloween hasn't been diluted by pop culture. It's been multiplied. Every vampire movie, every trick-or-treater, every haunted hayride is another verse in the same ancient hymn. The form changes, but the melody never stops. As you walk home, your shadow stretches under a flickering streetlight. You pass a glowing jack-o'-lantern on a porch, its grin wider than ever. The flame inside flickers once, like a wink. You nod, whisper, "Nice work," and keep walking. Because tonight, the monsters are movie stars, the ghosts are on screen, and the audience, well, the audience is still you, huddled in the dark, waiting for the next story to begin. You wake to the smell of sugar. Not cinnamon or apples anymore. No, this scent is sharper, more artificial, like nostalgia dipped in corn syrup. It's the late 20th century now, and Halloween has gone full capitalist. The monsters are mascots, the ghosts have trademarks, and the phrase, limited edition, carries more magic than any ancient incantation ever did. You're standing inside a supermarket in October 1985. The aisles are rivers of orange and black. Candy stacked in pyramids, plastic pumpkins with grins too wide to be trustworthy, and cardboard witches hanging from the ceiling like cheerful executioners. A jingle plays from a tinny speaker overhead, something upbeat, vaguely spooky, and deeply insincere. Kids run past you clutching bags of Reese's Pieces and Snickers, while exhausted parents debate how many fun-size bars constitute enough. The answer, of course, is never enough. The candy industry knows that better than anyone. Mainstream fact, by the 1980s, Halloween had become a billion-dollar enterprise. Candy sales, costume manufacturing, and seasonal decorations turned October into America's most profitable non-gift-giving holiday. Major corporations like Hershey, Mars, and Nestle competed fiercely for trick-or-treat dominance. Even McDonald's released pumpkin-shaped Happy Meal buckets, collectible plastic cauldrons for the suburban masses. You pick up a chocolate bar and turn it over. The wrapper practically screams at you. Special Halloween edition. There's nothing different inside, just better marketing. But it works. You buy 3. Outside, the suburban night hums with electricity. Inflatable ghosts bounce gently in front yards. Spotlights cast green and purple glows over neatly trimmed hedges. You can hear faint laughter from somewhere, children running door to door, chanting the phrase that now defines the night. Trick or treat. You follow them down the sidewalk, passing jack-o'-lanterns glowing like miniature suns. Each house has its own theme. Haunted graveyard, mad scientist lab, pirate ship. The creativity is endless. But beneath the spectacle, something primal still stirs. Every flickering candle, every plastic skeleton, every pile of leaves hiding a friend waiting to jump out. It's all an echo of the same ancient need. to face fear playfully on your own terms. A group of teenagers passes by dressed as movie monsters. Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Michael Myers. Their laughter feels rebellious, cathartic. The horror icons born from Hollywood's nightmares have become part of the celebration. They're the new saints of Halloween, each mask a modern totem for death, danger, and popcorn terror. You stop outside a costume shop called Fright Mart. The display window looks like chaos made retail. Plastic axes, rubber rats, fake blood, glittery fairy wings, and polyester capes all sharing space. Inside, a clerk in vampire fangs greets you with deadpan sincerity. Need help finding your inner demon? You grin. I think he's in the candy aisle. A fringe tidbit. Costume sales skyrocketed in the 1970s and 80s after major retailers like Sears and Woolworths began mass-producing affordable, ready-made Halloween outfits. Before that, most costumes were homemade. The shift turned Halloween into a consumer ritual, a holiday of buying identities for one night only. For kids, it was magic. For adults, it was marketing genius. Historians still argue whether this commercialization destroyed or preserved the holiday. Some lament that the mystical has been replaced by merchandise. Others claim it's precisely the buying, decorating, and dressing up that kept Halloween from fading like so many other faux traditions. If commerce is a spell, then candy is its sacrament. You wander further into suburbia. The lawns gleam under the orange glow of porch lights. The air smells faintly of melted chocolate and latex masks. Somewhere, a radio plays Thriller. Michael Jackson's voice slinks through the night. Half pop song, half seance. You pass a garage where neighbors are dancing, imitating the zombie choreography. A child dressed as Frankenstein claps along, grinning. This is Halloween 2.0, televised, commodified, and self-aware. The monsters have been declawed, made safe for the dinner table, printed on cereal boxes. And yet, you can't help noticing the sincerity behind the glitter. People love this night. It's communal, creative, liberating. For a few hours, adults can be kids again, and kids can be something else entirely. Everyone gets to unmask by putting a mask on. You duck into a convenience store for warmth. The clerk, wearing devil horns, hands you your change with a smirk. Busy night, he says. Someone just bought all our fake blood. Again, you both laugh. Behind him, a small TV shows a news report about Halloween safety tips. There's talk of razor blades and apples, poison candy, urban legends born from pure paranoia. Here's another historical nugget. Despite decades of warnings, there's no verified evidence of strangers actually poisoning Halloween candy. The myth spread in the 1970s and 80s during the Satanic Panic, a cultural fever that saw evil lurking behind every Ouija board and heavy metal lyric. It was Fear's comeback tour. Less supernatural, more suburban. Historians still argue whether that moral panic reflected genuine concern or media sensationalism. Probably both. The irony? It made Halloween even stronger. Every danger, headline, just kept the holiday in the spotlight. People may have checked their kids' candy, but they still went trick-or-treating. Fear sells, but so does defying it. You step back outside, the cool wind brushing your face. The moon hangs full over rows of houses glowing like embers. A child in a Batman cape sprints past, cape flapping, laughing so hard he almost drops his candy bucket. His mother calls after him. Careful, but she's laughing too. You pause at the edge of the street and take in the scene. Families, laughter, sugar light. Beneath all the gloss and consumerism, the ritual remains the same. People facing darkness with joy. You realize that for all its branding and profit, this is still Samhain in disguise. The fires just burn behind porch bulbs now. The offerings come wrapped in foil. And the spirits? They're friendly enough to ring the doorbell. You walk home past rows of jack-o'-lanterns grinning in the dark. Their carved faces flicker with that same ancient energy. The same balance between mischief and reverence, laughter and fear. You can almost hear the old druids chuckling from the other world, murmuring, "You've made it shiny, but it's still ours." And maybe they're right. The night smells of caramel and ozone, and you can feel the faintest hum beneath it all. The same heartbeat that's pulsed since the first Samhain fire burned thousands of years ago. Halloween has become an empire of candy and costumes, but at its core, it's still about something deeply human, remembering that darkness is inevitable, but not unbeatable. You smile at the thought and whisper into the night. The ancient ones would have loved this. Somewhere, a porch light flickers in agreement. It's the early 1990s now, and Halloween hums louder than ever. Buzzing televisions, cassette tapes rewinding, flashlights flicking on and off in darkened rooms. The smell of microwave popcorn hangs in the air. You're sitting cross-legged on a shag carpet, surrounded by friends, waiting for the scariest part of the night to begin. The lights go out. Someone whispers, "You guys ever heard about the babysitter and the man upstairs?" And just like that, the tradition of oral storytelling, older than the pyramids, older than Samhain itself, gets its modern reboot, the urban legend. Mainstream fact. In the 1980s and 90s, as Halloween grew into a pop culture juggernaut, so did the popularity of urban legends, short, chilling tales of ordinary people facing something unspeakable. The Hook, Bloody Mary, The Vanishing Hitchhiker, The Candyman. These stories spread through classrooms, chain letters, and whispered dares at sleepovers, serving the same purpose the Druids' campfire tales once did, keeping fear alive, but manageable. The girl with the flashlight points it under her chin for dramatic effect. Her voice trembles on purpose. You can hear her friends giggling nervously, half mocking, half believing. They say if you say her name 3 times in a mirror, she stops, smiling wickedly. She shows up. Someone snorts. Someone else actually looks toward the bathroom mirror. Nobody says a word. You grin. Different props, same instinct. Every culture in every century finds its version of "don't look too closely at the dark." The doorbell rings suddenly, and everyone jumps. You open the door to a group of kids in baggy store-bought costumes. Power Rangers, witches, skeletons. Their pillowcases bulge with candy. Trick or treat. They shout in perfect unison, voices crackling through plastic masks. You toss in some chocolate bars, pretending not to notice the kid dressed as a werewolf eyeing your bowl like a predator. When they run off laughing, you realize how deep the ritual has embedded itself. Every knock on every door is an echo of the same ancient exchange. Acknowledge the spirits, or they'll make mischief. What once involved druids and offerings of bread now involves Kit Kats and fake blood, but the structure is unchanged. A fringe tidbit. In the 90s, Halloween saw another transformation, its expansion into adulthood. Office parties, bar crawls, elaborate costume contests. Adults began reclaiming the holiday as a form of self-expression and rebellion against routine. Sociologists call it the carnivalesque revival, a safe, socially sanctioned form of chaos. Historians just call it predictable. Humans love pretending to be monsters, especially when rent's due next week. You step outside and walk down a quiet suburban street. The lawns are littered with plastic tombstones that read, "R.I.P. Bob's Diet." Fake cobwebs shimmer in porch lights. Someone's stereo plays Monster Mash. The whole neighborhood hums with laughter and motion, but if you listen closely, you can still hear the ancient hum underneath. the rhythm of old Samhain beating quietly beneath the bass of pop music. You pass a house where teenagers have set up a homemade haunted maze in their garage. Fog spills from a dry ice machine. Lights flash red and blue. And a kid in a ghost mask jumps out with a scream, so sudden you actually flinch. The teens howl with laughter. Gotcha! One yells triumphantly. You laugh too, wiping imaginary sweat from your brow. Fear, it seems, has become entertainment again, and everyone's in on the joke. Historians still argue whether Halloween's evolution into mass entertainment represents cultural decay or adaptation. Did we trade meaning for spectacle? Or did the spectacle become the new meaning? Maybe the act of playing with fear has always been the point, no matter what form it takes. You stop another corner and notice something fascinating. Houses divided. Some glow with decorations and music, while others sit dark and silent. Porches bare, doors shut tight. You wonder if those dark houses are rejecting Halloween or simply honoring its older, quieter version. The one meant to keep the dead at bay, not invite them in for candy. Further down the street, you spot a glow through a basement window. Inside, a family huddles together watching a horror movie marathon. On screen, a young woman runs through fog, chased by something unseen. The camera pans too fast, the soundtrack shrieks, and then laughter again. You realize Halloween has become a shared language. We all pretend to fear the dark together, even while holding popcorn. A child's voice calls out behind you. Hey, mister, cool costume. You turn around instinctively, but the street is empty. Just wind, just the rustle of leaves dragging across asphalt. You smile to yourself. Halloween's sense of humor hasn't aged a day. You wander to the town's edge, where the trick-or-treat traffic fades into stillness. The moon is low, swollen orange, a pumpkin in the sky. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wails, faint but steady. It sounds like a warning, or maybe just another part of the night soundtrack. You sit on a park bench, watching fog drift across the playground. The swings move slightly, though no one's there. You tell yourself it's the wind, but deep down you kind of hope it's not. Humans have always needed to believe the unseen is watching. It's what keeps us humble. You pull a miniature candy bar from your pocket and toss it toward the empty swings. For you, you whisper. A tiny, irrational part of you expects something to happen. A flicker of movement, a sudden chill, a voice. Nothing does, but you feel oddly content anyway. The gesture matters more than the result. Halloween has become a paradox now. It's both the loudest and most private holiday. It lives in the spaces between fear and fun, loneliness and laughter. It lets people be brave together in the safest way possible. You get up to head home. The porch lights are turning off one by one, the night growing still again. Behind you, somewhere, a motion sensor cackles as a plastic which springs to life. Happy Halloween, it screeches mechanically. You laugh under your breath. Because really, that's the point. Halloween isn't about summoning the dead anymore. It's about remembering what it means to feel alive. And even though the masks have changed, the ritual remains the same. Gather, laugh, pretend, repeat. You take one last look at the street. Every pumpkin flickers low, its grin softening in the wind. The candy's gone, the kids are asleep, but the night still hums with ancient patience. Halloween doesn't need belief to survive. It just needs participation. You whisper to the fading lights, "See you next year." And from the dark, something almost whispers back, "You always do." You wake to the faint blue glow of a computer monitor. The air smells faintly of dust and plastic, and somewhere a modem screeches to life, an unholy sound that, in 1998, everyone swears is progress. Welcome to the internet age. where fear no longer needs forests or fog to spread. It travels through dial-up. Halloween has found its next home, online. You sit in a dark bedroom, the blinds half closed, watching the glow of a bulky CRT screen. The web page loads line by line. Pixelated pumpkins, neon fonts, a tiny animated bat flapping endlessly. The title reads, True Halloween Horror Stories. 3 exclamation marks, just to prove its credibility. Mainstream fact. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, the internet transformed Halloween from a local, physical event into a global digital culture. Websites, forums, and early chat rooms became breeding ground for ghost stories, costume ideas, and urban legends. People no longer had to gather around a fire. They could haunt one another through keyboards. You scroll past blurry images, real witches caught on camera, cursed Halloween doll, and of course, the legendary Bloody Mary challenge. Try at midnight. The stories aren't new, just upgraded. Ancient folklore now has a modem connection, a teenage version of you. Let's be honest, you've been here before. Leans in close to the screen, half mocking, half believing. You click a link that claims to contain a haunted sound file. The speakers hiss, then a whisper. I'm behind you. You whirl around, heart pounding. Nothing, just the hum of your computer and the faint smell of burnt circuits. Welcome to digital folklore, the internet's version of Samhain. A fringe tidbit. Early researchers of online culture noticed that internet horror communities mirrored the structure of medieval festivals. There were ritualized scares, collective participation, and a constant balance between sincerity and satire. In other words, the first forums were just New Age bonfires where people swapped ghost stories in binary form. Historians still argue whether the internet diluted tradition or preserved it in a different shape. After all, the anonymity of online life allows the same ancient masquerade. People putting on digital masks, pretending to be someone or something else for one night or every night. You scroll further, finding chat threads with usernames like Pumpkin King 97 and Witch Queen 88. One user posts, "Anyone else's jack-o'-lanterns melting weird tonight?" Another replies, "That's not wax, bro." You laugh, but it lingers in your mind longer than it should. The line between joke and omen is thin here, exactly how Halloween likes it. Outside, the world is changing too. Halloween has gone corporate and cultural. Theme parks host massive Fright Nights. Fast food chains release glow-in-the-dark cups. Movie studios churn out sequels. Scream, Hocus Pocus, The Blair Witch Project. That last one, especially, it's 1999, and audiences think the footage is real. 3 students lost in the woods, their shaky camera found later. The marketing is genius. A website full of fake police reports, missing person posters, and diary entries. The internet doesn't just tell stories now, it builds realities. You step into a movie theater crowded with nervous teenagers. The film flickers to life. Every creak, every gasp, every breath feels raw and unfiltered. When the screen goes black at the end, nobody claps. They just sit there, haunted. That's the power of the digital myth. It feels like it could happen to you. When you step back outside, the world feels different. The air is cool, the moon sharp and high, but the streets look emptier somehow. Everyone's gone home to check their inboxes or refresh message boards, chasing more fear behind their screens. You can't decide if the connection has brought people closer or pulled them apart. By the early 2000s, the transformation is complete. Halloween now lives in pixels and broadcast schedules. You see it everywhere. Special episodes of sitcoms, seasonal emoji, chain emails warning of curse photos. Even the candy companies adapt. Snickers.com offers downloadable trick-or-treat trackers. It's charming and a little dystopian. Then social media arrives and everything explodes. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. These are the new haunted houses, full of costumes, jump scares, and algorithmic ghosts. Halloween becomes the internet's favorite holiday. Every post glows orange. Every profile picture has fangs. The hashtags rise like spells. Hashtag spooky season. Hashtag pumpkin everything. Hashtag witch talk. You scroll through an endless feed. Costumes, memes, pumpkins carved into celebrity faces. The tone shifts minute by minute. Goofy, eerie, heartfelt. Someone posts a grainy photo of a ghost caught on a baby monitor. Someone else insists it's just dust. You read both comments and realize this is how folklore has always worked. Belief and skepticism dancing in a perfect circle. A notification pops up. Your friend tagged you in a Halloween memory. You click, and there you are, years ago, holding a flashlight under your chin, telling a ghost story. The photo feels both ancient and immediate. The ritual hasn't changed. Only the campfire has. Historians still argue whether digital culture cheapens fear by flooding it with irony. But maybe the opposite is true. Halloween online is proof that humans still crave the thrill of the unknown, even in a world where every mystery seems Googleable. The dark corners of the internet are our new haunted forests, and every glowing screen another pumpkin face, smiling into the void. You lean back in your chair, the computer fan humming softly. Outside, a child's laughter echoes faintly. Real or a sound effect, you can't tell anymore. You glance at the reflection of your monitor in the window. For a split second, it looks like someone's standing behind you. You turn, just your coat, hanging on the chair. Of course. You laugh, shutting off the screen. The room plunges into darkness. You can hear the faint tick of the clock, and, somewhere far away, a single dog barking into the night. Maybe at nothing. Maybe it's something you can't see. You smile to yourself. Same game. You whisper. New rules. And as you head to bed, the computer's power light keeps glowing. A tiny, electronic candle in the dark. A modern jack-o'-lantern keeping watch over the ghosts in your Wi-Fi. You wake to the glow of a smartphone. No longer a flickering fire or a silver screen, but a smooth rectangle of light that never really turns off. It's the 2010s now, and Halloween has entered its final form. Digital spectacle. The ghosts have Instagram accounts. The witches run Etsy shops. And every October, the entire internet dresses up at once. You scroll through your feed, still half asleep, and it hits you. Halloween isn't a night anymore. It's a season. September barely ends before the first hashtags appear. Hashtag spooky season. Hashtag witch aesthetic. Hashtag skeleton squad. Your screen becomes a parade of neon pumpkins, fog filters, and people proudly showing off thrifted capes. Mainstream fact, by the 2010s, Halloween had become the second most profitable holiday in the United States, surpassed only by Christmas. Americans spent billions each year on costumes, decorations, and candy. Social media accelerated it even further, turning what used to be a single night into a month-long aesthetic, complete with themed playlists, recipes, and influencer-sponsor haunted houses. You watch as your phone becomes a Ouija board of sorts. Every swipe conjures new spirits. Makeup tutorials transforming faces into skeletons. Slow-motion videos of fog curling around candlelit pumpkins. Couples posing in matching vampire capes. The line between creation and ritual has vanished. People don't just celebrate Halloween anymore. They perform it. You wander through a city at dusk, and it's surreal. Every cafe window glows orange. Plastic cobwebs stretch across shop fronts. Neon ghosts blink over taco trucks and barber shops. Even office workers wear cat ears without irony. For 1 month, the world agrees to play along. You pass a bar hosting spooky trivia night. Next door, a yoga studio advertises full moon flow with pumpkin spice lattes. You grin. The Celts once burned livestock bones to honor the dead. Now you burn calories and sip cinnamon foam. Same vibe, different marketing. A fringe tidbit. Historians note a surprising rise in neo-paganism and witchcraft during the 2010s, particularly among younger generations. Online communities, especially on Tumblr and later TikTok, revived interest in rituals, tarot, and astrology. Modern witches, they called themselves. For many, Halloween wasn't just decoration, it was identity. The digital world, with all its noise, had created space for old magic to re-emerge in new ways. Historians still argue whether this modern witchcraft represents genuine spirituality or symbolic rebellion against rational society. Maybe both. Either way, Halloween became its high holy day, equal parts sacred and selfie-ready. You stop at a park where an outdoor movie is playing. Hocus Pocus, of course. Families sit on blankets under strings of orange lights. Kids wave glow sticks like fireflies. When Bette Midler belts, I put a spell on you. Half the crowd sings along. It's communal, kitschy, and oddly touching. No one here is afraid of the dark anymore. They're too busy enjoying it. The film ends, and a young woman nearby opens her phone to livestream the crowd. "Happy Halloween, everyone," she chirps, smiling into the lens. Thousands of little hearts float up her screen like sparks. You watch quietly, realizing the obvious. The campfire has gone global. The ritual still exists, just scattered across millions of tiny glowing rectangles. You walk downtown, where the nightlife pulses. Costumes everywhere. Digital age armor for people who crave transformation. A man in a full LED skeleton suit dances beside a girl dressed as an emoji. A vampire checks his reflection in his iPhone. A group of witches scroll through TikTok dances while waiting for their Uber broomsticks. The future is absurd and delightful. Still, something deeper hums beneath it all. You feel it when you pass a quiet apartment window, where a single candle flickers beside a framed photo. No hashtags, no filters, just a private offering for someone gone. The core of Samhain still breathes under all the glitter. Humanity never really stopped talking to its dead. It just added better lighting. Later that night, you scroll through YouTube and find entire genres devoted to Halloween. 24-hour haunted house challenges, extreme pumpkin carving, ghost hunting in abandoned malls. Fear has become entertainment content, packaged neatly between ads. And yet, you can't deny it, it still works. Your pulse still quickens when a door slams on screen. You still hold your breath, waiting for the next jump scare. The old power hasn't faded, it's just monetized. A notification pings. New horror short just dropped. You click. A girl sits alone in her bedroom, filming herself saying Bloody Mary 3 times. The screen flickers. Static. Then nothing. You chuckle. But when you glance at your own dark reflection in the window, you hesitate for half a second before turning away. Old instincts die hard. Historians still argue how much of Halloween's modern success comes from nostalgia. Maybe people cling to it because it's one of the few nights left where pretending feels socially acceptable. Maybe it's because, deep down, we know the darkness never really left. It just needed a prettier mask. As you walk home, you pass a pop-up store closing for the night. The mannequins stare blankly through the glass. A zombie bride, a skeleton in sunglasses, a clown with a smile far too wide. The clerk locks the door, hums Thriller, and disappears into the crowd. You linger for a moment, watching the reflections of streetlights shimmer across their plastic faces. For a heartbeat, they almost seem to move. You smile at the thought. Halloween has always been about that almost. The space between illusion and truth, between fear and fun. And now, with the entire world performing its own version online, the holiday has reached immortality. Not through ritual sacrifice, but through endless reposts. Back in your apartment, you open your phone one last time before bed. Notifications glow like embers. New horror filter available. Add spooky music to your story. Your memory from last Halloween. You scroll through images. Friends laughing. A carved pumpkin. A blurry ghost decoration caught mid-motion. You feel that familiar warmth in your chest. Despite the filters, despite the screens, something real remains. You still want to believe. You still want to play along. You dim the lights, set your phone face down, and whisper the same quiet farewell humans have murmured for millennia. See you next year. From your nightstand, your phone lights up again, unprompted. The lock screen flickers once, showing your reflection for just a moment longer than it should. You chuckle nervously, flip it over again, and lie back. The future hums softly in your pocket, warm as a lantern. The world's smallest jack-o'-lantern, guarding you through the long digital night. It's the 2020s now, and the world has gone quiet in a way that feels unnatural. The streets are empty, the masks are real, and the word, haunting, has taken on a brand new meaning. You wake up in the middle of a global pause, Halloween during a pandemic, and for the first time in centuries, the old festival looks more like its ancient self, private, reflective, a little lonely. Outside your window, the city feels pause between breaths. Porch lights flicker on schedule, but no footsteps echo on the sidewalks. The usual laughter, the shrieking, the sugar-fueled chaos, all gone. It's eerie and beautiful in a strange, sad way. The world is living through its own ghost story. You step out onto your balcony. Across the street, you see a jack-o'-lantern glowing on a stoop. Someone still took the time to carve it. The crooked smile feels defiant, a small orange rebellion against fear. Mainstream fact. In 2020, amid lockdowns and social distancing, traditional Halloween celebrations were largely canceled. Trick-or-treating plummeted, haunted houses closed, and parades went virtual. Yet online activity surged. People hosted digital costume parties, projected movies on garage doors, and shared photos of pumpkins on social media under the tag #QuarantineHalloween. The ritual adapted instantly, proof that the spirit of Samhain doesn't need crowds, just creativity. You scroll your phone that night, the glow illuminating your face in the dark. Posts flood in from everywhere. Homemade costumes over pajamas, carved pumpkins beside masks and sanitizer bottles. Families watching Hocus Pocus through video calls. One user writes, "We can't gather, but the ghost can." You smile. She's right. The dead have always been excellent at social distancing. Here's a fringe tidbit. Archaeologists studying pandemic behavior noted eerie parallels between 2020 and the rituals of ancient plagues. In both, people turned to firelight, symbols, and storytelling to preserve control over chaos. Just like their ancestors, modern families lit candles in windows, not to guide souls this time, but to signal hope. Some even called them quarantine jack-o'-lanterns. Historians still argue whether this return to minimalism represents a cultural reset or just temporary adaptation. Was Halloween rediscovered or merely restrained? Maybe the answer doesn't matter. The night, stripped of its noise and commerce, quietly remembered what it used to be, a vigil for the living as much as the dead. You light a candle yourself and set it near the window. The flame dances behind the glass, reflected against the empty street below. You whisper, "Stay safe out there," not sure whether you mean the living or the ghosts. The world slowly begins to move again. A year later, you find yourself at a small outdoor gathering. People wear costumes and real masks layer together. Vampires with surgical blue under their fangs. Witches wielding sanitizer sprays instead of wands. They laugh too hard, too long. After so much fear, the absurdity feels healing. A child dressed as a ghost waves from 6 feet away. "Trick or treat," he shouts, voice muffled by fabric. His bag already brims with candy thrown from porches like ritual offerings. The new etiquette of fear looks a lot like kindness. You realize how ancient this instinct is. When the world feels dangerous, humans still reach for ritual. The earliest Samhain fires were lit to push back plague, famine, and darkness. Now, LED lights and Wi-Fi carry the torch. We survive by pretending we can control what we can't, and in pretending, we make it true. The following years bring a strange hybrid Halloween, half physical, half virtual. People livestream haunted houses, project digital ghosts into their living rooms, and craft DIY fog machines out of humidifiers. The old festival has become more modular than ever. 1 part folklore, 1 part fiber optics. You attend a virtual seance stream one night, hosted by a TikTok medium. Thousands tune in. The chat scrolls faster than the candles flicker. She closes her eyes, murmuring words into a ring light glow. "If you can hear us, knock once." A sound echoes. Not a knock, exactly, but a pop from someone's microphone. The chat explodes. "She's here." You shake your head, smiling. Digital ghosts are louder than real ones ever were. A fringe observation from cultural analysts. They've noticed that in this century, Halloween has become a form of collective therapy. By transforming fear into fun, we rehearse resilience. We dress as death, laugh at it, photograph it, and post it. It's not denial, it's dialogue. Historians still argue what the holiday means now. Is it still pagan, Christian, capitalist? None of the above. Maybe it's just human. The one night when it's socially acceptable to remember that we're temporary, and to celebrate that fact with sugar and silly hats. You walk home through the city, the wind cool and clean. Some apartment windows glow orange, others are dark. A projector flickers across an alley wall, playing old black and white monsters. On a nearby doorstep, a bowl of candy sits untouched beside a handwritten sign. Take what you need. You take one piece. Not because you're hungry, but because you understand what it means. An offering, same as always. As you reach your door, you look up. The moon hangs low and perfect, bright enough to erase the stars. Somewhere far above the noise, past the satellites and signal towers, something older still watches. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's comfort. You light one last candle before bed. The tiny flame flickers and steadies, casting shadows that look like company. You realize Halloween doesn't need crowds to work. It just needs witnesses. A single person remembering the fire is enough to keep it burning another year. You whisper to the dark, "You're still here." And the dark, as always, whispers back, "So are you." You wake to another Halloween night. But this time, there's something quieter in the air. The noise of social feeds hums softly from your phone, but you don't check it. The streets outside still flicker with orange and purple lights, but you don't rush to join them. Tonight feels different, more like remembering than celebrating. The year is the present, the only time that really exists. Halloween is everywhere now, alive in your neighborhood, your playlists, your childhood memories, your algorithms. You've followed it through millennia, from pagan fires to pop-up stores, from blood rituals to plastic skeletons. And here you are, full circle, still lighting candles against the dark, even if now they're battery-powered. You open your window and breathe in the crisp night air. Leaves scrape across the pavement like whispering ghosts. The wind smells faintly of wood smoke and chocolate. Across the street, you see a family laughing as they take pictures by their glowing pumpkins. The mother adjusts her daughter's witch hat. The father kneels to relight a candle that's gone out. It's small, ordinary, and absolutely sacred. Mainstream fact: modern Halloween is a global phenomenon celebrated in over 30 countries. Though it began as a Celtic harvest festival, its imagery and customs have spread worldwide, sometimes as imported pop culture, sometimes reborn as local tradition. In Mexico, it intertwines with Dia de los Muertos. In Japan, it thrives as a costume street parade. In Ireland, the original home of Samhain, bonfires still burn every October 31st. The holiday never really left. It just learned new languages. You step outside and begin walking. The night hums with a strange balance, half laughter, half melancholy. Teenagers in superhero capes sprint down the block, while an older couple sits quietly on their porch, handing out candy to whoever passes by. You realize that everyone here, no matter their reason, is participating in the same ancient act, giving shape to the invisible. A fringe tidbit: some folklorists suggest that Halloween's longevity comes from its flexibility. It absorbs whatever the age demands, fear, humor, comfort, and mirrors it back to us. During famine, it was about survival. During war, remembrance. During prosperity, indulgence. During pandemics, adaptation. It's less a holiday than a cultural chameleon. Historians still argue what, exactly, we're celebrating. The dead? The harvest? Ourselves? Or maybe it's not celebration at all, but acknowledgement that everything living eventually becomes story. And on this one night, the boundary between living and story softens just enough for us to wave across. You pause at a crossroads where the streetlights buzz like tired fireflies. A cat slinks across the road, tail curling high. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn blows, a long, mournful note that sounds a little like a sigh. You remember the Celts' bonfires, the medieval solars, the immigrant ships, the parlor seances, the pranks, the candy, the movies, the hashtags. Every generation built another layer atop the same foundation. The need to name the dark, to make it smaller, to laugh in its face. You smile, realizing that Halloween has never been about the supernatural. It's about you, the human animal, standing in the cold, staring at the edge of the unknown, and refusing to blink first. You walk further down the street. A child dressed as a ghost waves, pillowcase swinging. You wave back, remembering how it felt to be that small, that fearless, that delighted by shadows. Every generation passes the torch, or in this case, the flashlight. You stop at the edge of town, where the houses thin and the stars grow bolder. The moon is bright and swollen, silvering the world in soft light. You sit on a bench beneath a maple tree, shedding the last of its leaves. For a while, you just listen. The wind through the branches, distant laughter, the steady heartbeat of October winding down. If you listen closely enough, you can almost hear all of them. The people who came before, the ones who danced around the first fires, who carved faces into turnips, who knocked on doors for soul cakes, who told stories by candlelight. You can feel them in the rhythm of the night itself, murmuring the same truth in every tongue. We're still here. And you whisper back, so are we. A cloud slides across the moon, and for a moment the darkness feels complete. Then, one by one, porch lights blink on across the town. Tiny artificial stars, defying the void. Maybe that's what Halloween has always been. 1,000 little lights saying, not tonight. You turn for home. The night folds around you softly, like a coat you've worn all your life. The last jack-o'-lantern flickers faintly, then steadies its grin. You step inside, shut the door, and let the quiet settle. You pour yourself a cup of something warm, maybe cider, maybe tea. The window glass reflects your own tired smile. You catch your reflection and think, not for the first time, that humans are the strangest creatures ever to walk the earth, terrified of death, yet always finding new ways to laugh at it. You blow out your candle. The smoke curls up like a whisper, then fades. The room feels softer now, the dark less demanding. You settle into bed and let your mind drift. The night outside goes on as it always has, unbothered, eternal, gently amused by all our efforts to domesticate it. Halloween will come again and again and again, because as long as humans exist, we'll need one night a year to remember that fear can be beautiful and endings can glow. And now, as the story fades, your breathing slows. The room grows quiet. The last echoes of laughter and rustling leaves dissolve into the hum of your own heartbeat. You've traveled through thousands of years tonight, through bonfires, cathedrals, movie screens, and city streets. And somehow, it all leads here, to you, lying in the dark, still listening. The lights outside your window dim one by one. Somewhere, a pumpkin's candle gutters out with a soft sigh. The night exhales, and you feel it too. Every sound, distant cars, the faint hiss of wind, feels gentler now, softened by the knowledge that this moment, this stillness, is part of a chain stretching back to the very first spark in the dark. You've seen how people across ages found their own ways to keep that spark alive. Rituals, stories, laughter, tiny lights trembling against endless shadow. And now, your breathing becomes one more rhythm in that timeless pattern. Let your thoughts drift like smoke. Imagine the night folding over the world, quiet and kind. The ghosts are at rest. The fires are banked. And you, the last witness of the story, are safe inside it. Let your eyes close. The dark isn't empty. It's just waiting, peaceful, patient. The same darkness the Celts once honored. The same night that always returns. Sleep now, knowing that the fire never really went out. It simply moved into pixels, into candles, into you. Good night.